Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this 1620 The Zone TV exclusive. At least for now, we'll be going up soon over on a AM radio on 1620 The Zone and 1620thezone.com. I'm John Bishop alongside Josh Peterson. And the breaking news this hour, coming just shortly after 12:30, is that Scott Frost has been relieved of duties as head coach at the University of Nebraska. A press conference coming up this afternoon at 3 o'clock. Here is the statement from Trev Alberts. Earlier today, I met with Coach Frost and informed him we were making a change in the leadership of our football program, effective immediately. Scott has poured his heart and soul into the Nebraska football program, both as quarterback and head coach, and I appreciate his work and dedication. After the disappointing start to our season, I decided the best path forward for our program was to make a change in our head coaching position. Associate head coach Mickey Joseph will serve as our interim head coach for the remainder of the 2022 season. And again, a press conference will take place 3 o'clock at Memorial Stadium. We will bring that press conference to you live here on 1620 The Zone TV and 1620 The Zone AM and 1620thezone.com. So, Josh, I kind of thought when we didn't get any word earlier this morning that we would probably wait either a day or who knows, maybe it would carry through past next week and wait until the October 1st or closer to the October 1st deadline. But it is apparent to Trev Alberts that a change needed to be made now. And I've gone through kind of a change here myself in the last, 24-ish hours or so. I was one who last week thought that if you're going to do this before the buyout reduces on October the 1st, you better have a really good reason. I mean, it's got to be just more than, what it looks like on the field. There's got to be an extenuating circumstance. There's got to be something else going on. But then you go through the emotions of last night and the way that people were feeling and just the horrific nature of how that game played out. Another game where you're a double-digit favorite at home and you get embarrassed by a Sunbelt team, and it just seemed like it was inevitable that this needed to happen before October 1st. And certainly there will still be some questions asked, I'm sure, by a lot of people who still believe, and I heard a few of them last night, still believe that a coaching change wasn't necessary. There might still be some folks who want an explanation for this, but at the end of the day, it now feels like this had to happen now. Yeah. And part of it maybe was circumstantial too, because you're going into a week against Oklahoma. You're going to be on the national stage. You're going to be on Big Fox. You're going to be on Big Noon Kickoff. And there was going to be, the story of the game. And listen, the story of the game is now going to be, hey, it's an interim coach. Mickey Joseph is here. So that story has changed. But just the level of distraction and taking away from that game that was going to take place if Scott Frost was still coaching in that game, I think made this a much easier decision than what it probably would have seemed like if you would have spelled out this scenario to me 48 hours ago.
No, I couldn't agree more. As you mentioned with Robbie last night, John, you and I discussed this last week. It really started when we were at CHI for volleyball, where that was the day that it was like, wait a second, he could get fired after the Georgia Southern game? That wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. And you look at what we said in that moment. Obviously, we aged poorly. It ended up happening. But the number of changes, I guess, that I've made to my thought process from that moment until right now, I thought leaving the stadium last night, I know I was listening to you guys, it seemed like we were all kind of in the same boat. Just seems like this was the moment where it had to happen. Seemed like it had to happen at this moment in time for the program. I think as I talked it out with someone this morning, again, like you look at the schedule, and originally it was supposed to be 6 games, a bye week, and then 6 more games. And the 6th game was going to fall on October 1st. The changes to the schedule in the offseason, you wonder if that, I don't know if it altered the timeline, or maybe it gave Trev a little bit more permission to himself or the university to move up the timeline. But I mean, the program turned into a disaster to start this season. turned into an absolute disaster. And so I think that Trev, I can't imagine he wanted to do this because, again, like, why not just do it last year? I can't imagine he wanted to, but, extenuating circumstances, I guess. I'm very curious to see what he says in a few hours when he meets with the media, because that's going to be the question. Why now instead of last year? Do you feel like you threw away this season? Especially, John, if you look at this, the Big Ten West right now, it's kind of a raging dumpster fire. And I have to imagine there's a lot of frustration inside those walls that they're not hitting the ground running with a new coach. And instead they decided to run it back. And, in a way, not to say, look, we can say this now because the Frost era is done. The Frost era itself probably hit rock bottom last night when they lost to Georgia Southern, the way in which they lost to Georgia Southern.
Well, it did with a lot of fans, certainly. And while there has been a growing sentiment that this change was going to be happening, certainly what happened after the Northwestern game changed a lot of people's minds. And then last week just didn't make anyone feel any better about it and probably soured even more folks. Yesterday, and me and the whole use of the term rock bottom, but yesterday just seemed like the dropping point for everybody else, most everybody else. Again, I don't want to say it's unanimous because it's not. I was listening to Husker Radio last night after Robbie and I went on the air, and still a lot of calls were towards the effect of, hey, this isn't the answer. What's the use in firing him right now, et cetera, et cetera. And that's certainly a conversation we can get into as we develop here this afternoon. But last night was just a bottoming out for a lot of folks, because there's, yes, blowout losses certainly were the things that did in Bo Pelini, that did in Bill Callahan, that did in Mike Riley. And while the blowout losses haven't been as plentiful under Scott Frost, just the continued sameness of everything and just the continued pattern of the way Nebraska underperforms against so-called lesser opposition, that's the type of loss that just not a lot of people can take at this point. And I'll be very curious, and I hope, and here's how we're going to plan to do this. Connor Happer, our colleague, I believe is going to be headed here to Lincoln at the press conference, which we will bring to you live here on 1620thezone.com, 1620 The Zone TV, also 1620 The Zone AM radio.
Josh Hudson is heading there right now.
This is still AM radio. We will be going up live, by the way, on the radio side here momentarily. We just need to get a producer in the studio.
Josh Hudson's on his way. He'll be there very, very soon.
And so we'll be going up, for those of you who can't stay with us here on the video side, we will be simulcasting this on the AM here very shortly, and of course on the 1620 The Zone app. But I'm still going to at least want to hear a little more than just, yeah, they're 1-2. Yeah, they've been underwhelming, because again, there was a reason why you put the October the 1st date on the contract and halved the buyout from 15 down to 7.5. Now Trev had already lowered the buyout, because originally if this had happened at the end of last year, the buyout would have been about, I think it was $25 million. So it had already come down from that point to where it is currently, and the buyout's going to be $15 million. And I'm sure that will be asked at the press conference, official dollar figures, but we believe it's going to be $15 million for the buyout. Why this couldn't wait another, I guess it'd be 20 days now until October the 1st. And because a lot of last November was twofold. Trev saying, how responsible they wanted to be with the resources, responsible they wanted to be with the money. And the other part, of course, he mentioned the loyalty. Why was it necessary today on September 11? I know. That's why I had to watch myself whether I said it, but it is September 11. Why it was necessary today, just for most teams, 2 weeks into the season, for Nebraska, 3 games into the season, why it had to happen now. I still believe there at least needs to be some sort of explanation there. Now, I don't know how far Trev's going to go into this, but Josh, you and I both know this relationship has not been good almost from the very beginning. You go all the way back to last August when the NCAA allegations and violations were released on the illegal practices during the COVID year, and just the body language that was there. And, Trev Alberts almost having to pull Scott Frost away from the microphone to end the press conference. You could just tell from that moment, and then moving forward. And of course, again, a lot of the things that we can share here on the radio or on 1620 The Zone TV, we can share only what we can confirm. But you and I hear a lot of other things that can't be totally verified. But it just every single breadcrumb in this trail has led us to this relationship between Frost and Alberts was not good from the beginning, and it never really got better. Trev tried to do the best job he could to put a shiny face on it.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm going to go back because we happen to have it here, Josh. I'm going to play this. This was from Big Ten Media Days back in July at Lucas Oil Stadium. Here was Trev Alberts talking about the relationship with Scott Frost.
Whether it's your marriage or just friendship, right? It takes time to get to know somebody. We all have our strengths and weaknesses, and I talked, I think, when I first back in July a year ago, we talked about trust. And trust goes both ways. Coaches have to earn the trust of administrators, and administrators have to earn the trust of the coaches. So I think just being transparent, sharing information with Scott, working through, getting his perspective, and slowly I think it kind of naturally, organically evolves into some trust where he can bring some things to me, I can bring things to him, and we can work through them together. So I'm really, really pleased with where the relationship is right now. I'm pleased with where football is. We haven't won any games, but I'm pleased with how bold and strategic that Scott and the staff have been in trying to make the changes necessary to affect the change needed to win games in a very difficult conference. And by the way, as you just mentioned, Andy, it's not going to get any easier. We're bringing in a really challenging brand. So our job is to figure it out. And we're going to have a much better chance of figuring out if we're doing it together rather than doing it in silos.
And, she's trying there to put a positive spin on it. But it was then at the very end, we're going to do a better job of getting through it if we're doing it together and not in separate silos. And I would not be surprised if Alberts at least alludes here in a couple of hours. 3:00 again is the press conference here in Lincoln. If he alludes to the fact that maybe there was some kind of separation there, maybe he won't. But again, I'm going to at least want the question asked. What else beyond just the 1-2 start and losing to a Georgia Southern led to this decision so early in the season?
Yeah, and I mean, it's so interesting again to hear that clip and to know how Frost was talking about stuff at the exact same time, right? Like,
yes,
again, the phrase that I kept using was talking past each other, and I use that a lot throughout the offseason. I'm with you. I still want to know, what. I get it, man. They lost to Georgia Southern. It's a bad loss. It's another loss to a Group of 5 program, but still, like, what makes sense of this happening now? I was talking to somebody this morning. Was told that Trev wanted to fire him after Ireland, that he actually that he had to get talked out of it by Nebraska's in-house legal counsel, that they talked him out of waiting. So that was August 27th into August 28th in theory on Sunday. And he wanted to do so then. And so that tells me that, and look, I trust this person. That tells me that it can't just be about a loss, right? It can't just be about losing to Northwestern. It can't just be about losing to Northwestern and then Georgia Southern. It can't just be about being tied at the half or being tied late in the game versus North Dakota. If there has to be something more to this, if he is willing to. I mean, John, again, it's 3 weeks away. It is one game away in theory. If you fire a guy at 12:01 a.m. on October 1st,
right?
What necessitated this move? He knows that. He knows that he's going to get asked that question. He's going to have the answer. But that is a huge part of this story, is what changed in such a short amount of time that caused Trev to decide to make this decision now versus waiting just a few weeks.
Again, we're streaming live here on 1620 The Zone TV, our YouTube channel. We will be soon joined by 1620 AM. So those of you who can't stay with us in the video side of things will be able to catch us on the air on 1620 The Zone AM radio. By the way, all of this is still AM radio.
Still AM radio.
And also 1620thezone.com. Press conference to come at 3 o'clock this afternoon from Lincoln. Trev Alberts will be speaking. The press release that was sent out about 20 minutes ago only said that Trev Alberts will hold a press conference. And typically in these spots, you usually don't hear from the president, the chancellor, whomever. It's usually just the athletic director that speaks at this. And knowing Trev and being the media savvy individual that he is, he will take questions.
Yep.
And it will be fascinating to hear, how he answers some of those questions, as we just alluded to a little bit ago. The other part of this too, this is the earliest that I can think of. I can't pretend to know everything about the history of Nebraska football. This is easily the earliest any Nebraska head football coach has been fired. Very rarely do you see it happening in season. I mean, if you think about it,
I was going to say, is any of the head coaches for Nebraska
Mike
football?
Riley waited until the end of the season. Bill Callahan waited till the end of the season. Bo Pelini, with the bowl game left, but it was at least still at the end of the regular season. This is the first time in the modern era that Nebraska has fired a coach midstream, and it's not just midstream. It's literally at the quarter pole of the season. There's still 75% of the season to go. And that might be too, Josh, one of the things that might have motivated this decision. If you look at the results of yesterday, Wisconsin lost.
Yep.
Iowa lost.
Yep.
Northwestern lost. This division right now isn't great. Now I'm not trying to make a case that Nebraska looks like a team that could contend in the division right now, but perhaps some of this decision is, well, maybe if we, do this, punch him in the face change that was going to be made anyway. I mean, it was a foregone conclusion. After last night, there was no way Frost was going to coach next year at Nebraska. We knew that. Yeah. And so maybe there might be, I'll be curious to hear if Trev has any inclination to say, well, we still have 75% of our season left to go, and we still see a situation where if we have better leadership, maybe we can rally the troops and galvanize forces and still make something out of what right now looks like a disaster. Now, I even asked the question last night, Leighton, Big Red overreaction with Ravi, and I wasn't trying to ask it in a, well, it doesn't make any sense to fire Frost now, quote, but how does letting Scott Frost go today on the 11th of September change how the defense is playing? Because the defense right now is a tire fire. I mean, I just as we were getting this information, I was doing my offensive charts. Nebraska right now, Josh, is averaging 0.5 points per possession, or 0.5 points per play, which is a full 1/10 of a point better than all of last season. It's a really good number. Mm-hmm. In other words, Nebraska is doing everything it needed to do to win from an offensive standpoint. 28 points should have been enough to beat Northwestern. Obviously, 38 points was enough to beat North Dakota. 42 points should have been enough to beat Georgia Southern. Famously, it was the first loss in 215 games in the history of Memorial Stadium where Nebraska lost when scoring 35 points. It had never been done until last night. The offense is working. The offense is scoring. Now, you can say, well, Northwestern, not good. Fine, whatever. But you can only play who you've played so far in the schedule. The bottom line is the lion's share of this season's woes rest on the defensive side of the ball. And so the question does beg to be asked, if by firing Frost now, if you still think you can salvage part of the season, how does making this move now make that defense better?
That's the big thing, right? Like, we can talk all we want about, did the players believe in the direction of the program? Did they believe in Scott Frost? And I definitely, like with any group of 100+ dudes, you're going to have those who, ride or die. I consider a Garrett Nelson a ride or die type player. Absolutely. And you're going to have some players that are like questioning things, because that's how things work. If you're losing, and especially if you're on the bench, you're like, okay, is this really something that's moving in the right direction? And so that all of that could be mended. Let's pretend all of that could be mended with Mickey Joseph. And if those of you missed it, Mickey Joseph is now the interim head coach. By the way, first ever black head coach for Nebraska in any sport is now Mickey Joseph today, and moving forward for at minimum the rest of the year.
Point.
So all of that could be fixed, and that's good. Right? The mental side of this program, it's soft as hell. We've talked about it for a while. It's a fragile group. That could all get fixed. The defense is still the defense, though. And the defense is bad. You saw the holes last night that Georgia Southern was able to run through. You saw the passes that they were able to complete. One punt, right? One punt. They were, I believe, 7 for 7 to begin.
7 for their first 7
on third down. So
the only time they were stopped, really, there was the 2 interceptions, and both were in. Well, they weren't in the Georgia Southern wasn't in the red zone, but those interceptions were made inside the red zone, and then the end of half debacle. This game could have been a worse loss if Georgia Southern's able to punch it in the last minute of the first half.
Exactly. And that's the thing. So think about, I know you guys hit on this last night too. Like, they had multiple turnovers. They had reviews go their way. Like, they had all of these things.
That last drive, second to last drive by Nebraska. Think about all those who like to play the whole hard luck thing. Nebraska doesn't get this call, didn't get that call. Those 2 replay reviews could have easily been justified as saying there's not enough video evidence. It was that close. Both calls on the field went against Nebraska, yet they did overturn those calls. So they got those 2. And I'm not saying, that Nebraska was a benefit of bad calls. They got those 2, we'll call them breaks. They were 2-0 in the turnover margin. They did not turn the ball over and gained 2 turnovers and still lost as a 22-point favorite at home, giving up 45 points.
Yeah, and so now, all of that to circle back to the question that you just kind of asked, like, can this salvage the season? In theory, it can. If like the, and I think the culture was really bad. If that can be fixed just enough, the defense is going to have to make plays. They're going to have to outscore people. They're going to have the inverse of last night, 45-42. And that's probably what it's going to be like all season long. A tweet from Steve that I wanted to get to real quick, because it referenced a tweet from a player. He says, so with the offense doing well, was that Frost calling plays, focusing on the run, or will the offense now pass more with Whipple in full control? AJ Allen just tweeted, seems to be okay with the decision. It's telling. AJ Allen, John, he just tweeted, control what you can control. With that being said, let's finish #GBR. Look, I was told in no uncertain terms yesterday that Whipple actually was calling plays last week the whole time, even in the second half. Like, obviously Frost was involved, but Whipple was still calling plays. I think that he obviously was calling plays last night. Does this mean they'll run the ball more, throw the ball more? I don't know if I can answer that question in particular, but look, I think we can all agree right now the offense is definitely not the problem at this moment in time for Nebraska. So if they're gonna beat, look, Oklahoma's gonna be a bear, but if they're gonna beat Oklahoma or Indiana or Rutgers or Purdue or Illinois, they're gonna have to figure out a way to get some stops, and their offense is gonna look. Here's the thing too, John. Like, can their offense keep this up against those defenses, especially? And I didn't even mention the November teams, but like, we know what happened in the second half versus Northwestern. It was tough sledding for them. So what's the true Nebraska offense? And mainly, can the defense, they have to improve, or else, really, it's going to look like the last Bill Callahan year, where you're going to just have some ridiculous scores. And I think every week almost you're going to be like, hey, a new record was set for most yards, most whatever, yada, yada, yada.
So again, Scott Frost has been fired as head coach at Nebraska. Press conference with Trev Alberts coming up at 3:00 this afternoon. We are currently exclusively on 1620 The Zone TV, our YouTube channel. I don't believe
we're on 1620thezone.com.
Okay, good. We have the video up on 1620thezone.com. So if you do want to follow us, maybe in the car or whatever, you can go to 1620thezone.com or the 1620 The Zone app, and our video stream is available in the app. I see that Josh is just arriving to the studio, and he's going to let us know. He'll give us a thumbs up as soon as he's ready to go on the air. So for our viewers here, we're going to pause for just a moment while we get the AM side ready to go. And then as soon as we do, we will basically reset the situation for all of our listeners on the radio. So as soon as Josh gives me the thumbs up to pause, we will pause and then join all of our friends on the radio.
So this is obviously weird background stuff, but Josh, I don't know if we have an open or a breaking news sounder. Let's come back.
Someone requested a frost flash.
Oh Lord, is that the way we want to start on the radio?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
But yeah, Josh, if you have a breaking news sounder or something like that, we could trying to talk to us. So yeah, we could do something like that.
Let's see. So I suppose, do I need to add these to the stream here? We probably should. We'll mute that because it's just going to be us two. So.
It's just going to be us two. All right. So there we go.
Yeah. So we'll mute that. We'll let Josh get ready to go.
Josh, we can't hear you. Oh, because the studio is muted. Here, we're going to unmute that. What's up, Josh?
We've hit news sounder on radio.
And then I think he's got to take himself out of mono.
Yes, I believe so. This is the beauty of live radio, ladies and gentlemen, trying to get everything, because this is Josh and I are actually in our homes today. We're not in the studio as we usually are, so how the audio is routed is a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll be joining the folks on AM radio here.
I think we are.
So we're ready to go?
All right. We're on the radio.
Hello, everybody. John Bishop, Josh Peterson with you. I'm in Lincoln. Josh is in Omaha. And breaking news this afternoon from Lincoln. Athletic Director Trev Alberts announcing around 12:30 this afternoon in a statement, 2-paragraph statement. Earlier today, I met with Coach Frost and informed him we were making a change in the leadership of our football program effective immediately. Scott has poured his heart and soul into the Nebraska football program, both as a quarterback and head coach, and I appreciate his work and dedication. After the disappointing start to our season, I decided the best path forward for our program was to make a change in our head coaching position. Associate head coach Mickey Joseph will serve as our interim head coach for the remainder of the 2022 season. That is the end of the official statement. The press conference with Athletic Director Trev Alberts will take place at 3 o'clock this afternoon in Lincoln. Our Connor Happer is planning to attend. We will, of course, bring you that press conference live here on 1620 The Zone, 1620thezone.com, the Zone mobile app, and for those of you who have been watching along here on 1620 The Zone TV. I'm John Bishop alongside Josh Peterson. Want to thank producer Josh from Connor Happer Show, joining us in studio along with Neil Nelkin. And we will be taking calls when we do get a chance. We're going to make sure we have all of our audio stuff set to go so that we don't get any feedback in our headsets. But right now, Josh, just to kind of recap for the listeners on the AM side, we apologize for those of you who've been watching since the start here on video, if we might be repeating ourselves a little bit. But, the last, now it's been 12, 15 hours since the end of the game last night. A lot of things have changed. Certainly the momentum of this season going off the rails and the Frost era coming to an end. It took a big turn at Northwestern, continued to take a downward turn last week. And yesterday, for, dare I say, a large percentage of the fans, certainly for the media, it's the first time I've heard basically universally, and I tried to get as much, intake from different sources, whether it be World Herald, the website guys, everything else. And while there was a sentiment that this could happen, certainly the fact that it now became inevitable that it had to happen hit. If for those who weren't there yet or sitting on the fence, it hit for those people. And it seems like this was the only move that could be made, even though it comes 19 days before the end of the month and the kick-in of the buyout being cut from $15 million, where it currently stands, to $7.5 million.
Yeah, we're 2 hours away from the press conference. And the question that I think I am most interested in now at this point in time, John, is why now instead of in 20 days? Because in between this period, I mean, if you do it at all hours of the night, they're only playing one football game, and that's the game versus Oklahoma. So what changed to, from all the way back in November to bring him back versus today that they couldn't wait just a little bit longer? Because Trev talked about it last year, the financial implications of making this move. It was a lot. It was a lot that they would have had to take on. Now, I get it. Nebraska can afford it. The Big Ten just, announced a huge television deal. Like they're going to be making plenty of money. They are not going to go broke over this move. But it goes against what he said a few months ago. And that's not to say, like, look, he probably didn't see a 1-2 start coming. And maybe it's something as simple as we got off to such a bad start. It's obvious that the program is going in the wrong direction. Need to make a move here. But again, it goes against what he was saying then. So what changed beyond just the football? In my opinion, it goes beyond just the football. For those who were just joining us on the radio, who weren't listening in earlier, I had a conversation with a source earlier today that Trev wanted to fire Scott Frost after the game in Ireland. He wanted to fire him. He was talked out of it by Nebraska's legal team. And that tells me, to circle back to what you just mentioned, John, that tells me that it goes beyond just the wins and the losses of this season so far.
Oh, certainly, yeah.
It goes beyond starting 1-2. And so if he was willing to do so in that moment, and again, I mean, right now we're talking about 20 days away from the buyout going down. In that moment, it was barely over a month. It was a month and a few days. If he was willing to do so then after a loss in Ireland, why? What's the reason why? And so I'm curious as to if we will get the answer later today.
We will when we get a chance, and we'll make sure we have all of our audio P's and Q's straight. We'll do our best to get to some calls in a little bit. Obviously, we've got a lot of folks who are watching in on the video stream and commenting there. You can tweet at us into the JTech Construction Zone Twitter feed. At USC 1620 is our show account, and that's where Josh and I live. So if you want to tweet at us at USC 1620, or if you want to email into the Equitable Bank inbox, John at 1620thezone.com or Josh at 1620thezone.com. And again, once we get, and what we'll do is, because it looks like I'm going to need some water, we'll take our first commercial break here in just a couple of seconds, so we can kind of reset everything. And then once we get going, we'll open up the Les Hills Harley Davidson hotline at 402-951-1620. The other things that, will be considered in all of this, and I mentioned this before we went on the simulcast with the AM, there's still 75% of the season left to go. Yesterday, the Big Ten West took it on the chin. Yes, Minnesota continues to look good, granted against overmatched competition. Illinois won again yesterday, but Wisconsin losing. Iowa's not great. Northwestern lost to Duke at home, which maybe was a pretense to the day, because we all wondered, well, just how good is this Northwestern team? Well, we found out they were down 21-0 at home, and they did try to come back, but ended up losing to a Duke team picked to finish last in their division in the ACC. You wonder if Trev Alberts, in an effort, and listen, this is part of what you have to do as leadership, because you're trying to promote some hope. And there are going to be some people. Granted, Josh, we don't hear from as many of them perhaps as others do, but there are still going to be some people that hear this news today and are going to be very upset, and think that it was too premature or too hasty or just the wrong move. And part of what today's address is going to be about, I would think, from Trev Alberts at 3:00, is to still sell some hope. And with the division not looking particularly good, with 75% of the season left to go, you do wonder if maybe part of this will be, hey, listen, we still think that, with some good leadership, that we have good enough players that maybe we can still make a run at this thing. And I know how ridiculous that sounds, given how the defenses looked awful to this point. But there is going to be an element of trying to sell. I think there does need to be at least a little bit of an element, not just to sell hope for the long term, the big picture, the years to come, but also still sell some hope for this season because there's still a sellout streak that's on the line, and you still want to give fans a reason to show some support and to be there, because right now this fan base is pretty angry, and maybe it's not as divided as it was with Bo Pelini, but after Bo Pelini was fired, there was an entire offseason to kind of bring things back together or soothe things, or maybe tamp down some of the negativity. This is the 11th of September.
Yeah.
There's still 75% of the season left to go. There's a lot of time for, people to get angry. And Nebraskans have always been this, hey, we got to keep things together. We got to keep rowing in the same direction. We got to keep positive. So I wonder how much of today's address, when Trev Alberts speaks to us, isn't just about the big picture of making Nebraska football great again next year and the years beyond, but how to salvage at least this season, because this is unprecedented. Nebraska's never fired a coach without cause this early in a season in the modern era.
No, they absolutely have not. And I mean, you keep saying that 75%. John, it's we're not even midway through the month yet. And you and I sensed it last week. The number of people that had checked out, we've seen that in basically every year that you and I have been on the air together. There's kind of become this breaking point where people are like, look, am I going to watch them? Sure. Am I going to listen to the games on the radio? Sure. But I've kind of pulled back in terms of engaging with them on a day-to-day basis because they just, frustrate me too much. And it's usually been November. There was a couple of times where it happened in October. Can't ever remember a moment where it happened in September, let alone the first week of September. And that's what last week was. And you wonder if Trev sensed it too. I got an email last night from a booster that, Skybox owner, owned it since 2013, and mentioned that the box costs over $100,000 a year. Email ended. Yeah, this product isn't acceptable for the money. It's not worth 20% of the price. I'm over it. Let the next sucker pay that price for nothing. And you do wonder, and I certainly do, and I think it, how many boosters were they said, look, I'm fed up with this, and I'm not going to keep supporting this. I'm not going to keep supporting this program if he is the guy that's in charge. And so there's been a theory proffered for a while. Last year, maybe he got a stay because there were boosters who said essentially the opposite. If you get rid of him, then I am actually done with you. But how many people over the last few weeks have said, this is it. This is it. I am not going to support this program anymore. And look, John, you don't want this program, this brand. I don't think they want to turn on the television. I don't think they want people to turn on the television in October and November and see a stadium that is thousands of empty seats. It still never has really happened. There's never been that moment where you turn on the start of a Husker game and it's obvious that it's like 75% full, 60% full. That has never happened. I think that was in danger. And look, it still might, but I think that was in danger of happening this year more than in 2017, more than in 2014, and more than in 2007. And I don't think that they wanted the optics of that. And look, it's obvious that it was toxic. It was unhealthy. And that's, again, why we wait to hear from Trev to see, what extra answers we're going to get from him on why now versus 20 days from now when the buyout would have been cut in half.
402-951-1620. We'll open up the phone lines, the Les Hills Harley-Davidson hotline. Of course, 1620 The Zone's email inbox, the Equitable Bank inbox, John at 1620thezone.com or Josh at 1620thezone.com, and the JTech Construction Zone Twitter feed at USC 1620. We'll also keep you up to date on the NFL scores because, by God, I was going to sit down and watch some NFL today. I see.
Banks and I had literally just gotten in the car. He was so excited. Yeah. He was going to go see Grandma and Grandpa. He was wagging his tail, and then I got a text that said, uh-oh.
Yeah, me. I wasn't even looking at my Twitter at that time. I was kind of working on some other stuff. Yeah. San Francisco's up 7-0 on the Bears in the second quarter. 10-3 Texans over the Colts. Washington off to a good start, 14-3 on Jacksonville, but Jacksonville is driving. We'll keep an eye on the NFL today. We do apologize for those of you who are hoping to hear some NFL on 1620 The Zone. But breaking news, if you're just joining us, Scott Frost has been relieved of duties as head coach at Nebraska at a 16-31 record after last night's 45-42 loss to Georgia Southern. Mickey Joseph becomes the first black head coach. Even it is on an interim basis, but he is the first black head coach in Nebraska athletics history, varsity athletics history, any sport. And he will serve as the interim head coach for the rest of the season. No word on any other assistant coaches or any of the other moves today. We anticipate that we will hear some of that from Trev Alberts. The press release said that Trev Alberts will hold the press conference. No word if Mickey Joseph is going to speak. They may wait till tomorrow. Tomorrow is the normal Monday press conference when the head coach speaks. I would guess that unless something precipitates needing to speak today, if Mickey Joseph, plans any changes, and I don't think he will, but if he does speak today, maybe that would predict that there are some changes that might still be made. But I would guess at this moment that Mickey Joseph would be on schedule to speak tomorrow prior to the start of Oklahoma week. Want to thank producer Josh, who's running the dials for us this afternoon. We'll be with you this afternoon. Again, press conference at 3. Josh Peterson and I will be back with more of this 1620 The Zone special. Scott Frost has been fired. You're listening to this special broadcast of 1620 The Zone, 1620thezone.com, and 1620 The Zone TV.
It's not easy being the one everyone counts on to keep the facility running, no matter the weather or supply chain hiccup. But we get you, Raymond in Buffalo, and Maria in Miami, Jules in Minneapolis, and Stan in Central Indiana, taking control of everything that's under your control. At Grainger, we're here for you with experienced branch staff at over 250 locations so you get the product you're looking for. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
This is Loyalty Lab Interview 6. Subject, grandmother's loyalty. Margie, what do you do when your grandson misbehaves?
Angels don't misbehave.
Here we study the most loyal, like you and... Oh, there goes the lamp.
Shouldn't have put it there.
Shell and the Fuel Rewards program has our members' backs, too. It's super easy to save on every gallon. Loyal, just like how you acted like that wasn't his fault.
Someone should clean that up before he gets hurt.
Yes, loyal, just like that.
10 years of FR.com. Terms and conditions apply.
The start of the NFL season is here, and the best place to practice your touchdown dance, Billy White shoes, is America's #1 sports book. It is FanDuel. FanDuel is going to kick off week number 1 with a no sweat bet for everybody.
Yeah, no sweat bet. Got to hit the gritty. Maybe not so much Billy White shoes Johnson. We like to keep it current for all those fine folks out there. Remember, you got to go over to the app, get it downloaded, and enter the promo code ZONE. It's safe. It's secure. They're easy payouts. Plus, with no sweat, it's no sweat.
I like the Vikings. Look at that line against the Packers. New to FanDuel Sportsbook. Just sign up with the promo code ZONE to get started. That's promo code ZONE. Either way, celebrate the return of the football season with a no-sweat bet during week 1 and make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NFL. 21 over present Iowa. First online real money wager. Only $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued and now withdrawable free bets that expire 14 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-BETS.
Every Friday, we bring you discounts to some of your favorite businesses in Omaha. Well, we decided that one deal a week just wasn't enough. Welcome to OmahaWeekendDeals.com. This weekend's deal is to Cops. Receive 2 $25 gift vouchers for just $25. Cops makes delicious pizza, fresh salads, tasty charred wings, sandwiches, pastas, and steaks. For the extended menu, visit them at Shadow Lake Town Center or 180th and Center. Head to OmahaWeekendDeals.com now to get yours. That's OmahaWeekendDeals.com.
O'Reilly. Trust the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts to recommend the best products for your car. Like 5 quarts of Mobile One Full Synthetic, now just $33.95, plus earn double O Rewards points. Extend the life of your vehicle, improve performance, and protect your engine against sludge and wear with Mobile One Full Synthetic at O'Reilly Auto Parts and O'ReillyAuto.com.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
For the early risers in Lincoln and Omaha, Saturday mornings join a new congregation. The guys from the Church of the Corn are now live every Saturday morning on 1620 The Zone. Catch Zach, Drake, and yes, even Fitz. Saturday morning
Even Fitz.
here on 1620 The Zone. Join the choir every Saturday and find out. The Church of the Corn is in session every Saturday morning, 8 to 10, right here on 1620 The Zone.
Cox Panoramic Wi-Fi includes advanced security to help protect all your connected devices. You'll get real-time alerts. Oh, like this one, so you don't have to worry about malware. Or when your kid downloads a song from a shady link. And now all your computer can play is
red color, where are you?
all blocked, thanks to advanced security, included with Cox Panoramic Wi-Fi. Advanced security must be enabled in the Panoramic Wi-Fi app. Restrictions apply.
The Zone. It's been a long time since I've heard that breaking news sounder. That's an oldie but a goodie. Welcome back. 1620 The Zone, 1620thezone.com, 1620 The Zone TV, live this afternoon with breaking news. Scott Frost, after a 16-31 career in 4 years, 4+ seasons, has been fired by athletic director Trev Alberts. Alberts will be holding a press conference this afternoon at 3 p.m. We will bring you live coverage right here on all of our platforms, the one you're watching here and the one you may be listening to in your car, in your home, on your app, wherever you may be in the world today. 402-951-1620 is the Les Hills Harley-Davidson hotline. I'm just trying to peruse, Josh, a little bit of the rest of the internet and the rest of the reaction. Ted Carter, university president, system president, just tweeted out here shortly ago, "We're grateful for everything Scott Frost has done as a player, coach, and leader of young men. Unfortunately, the results on the field just aren't there. Nebraskans expect us to compete for championships, as do I. We had all hoped to see our program move in the right direction, but with Oklahoma and Big Ten play still ahead of us, it's clear we need to make a change. As difficult as this decision is, I fully support A.D. Alberts' path forward. I have complete confidence in interim coach Joseph. There's a lot of football left to be played. Now is the time to rally around our players and give them full support. All of us at the university wish Coach Frost and his family the very best. We look forward to continuing to cheer on our Huskers." So that kind of leads to what we were talking about just a little bit ago. Part of the selling point to this is there's still 75% and an entire, well, minus one game, Big Ten season left out there. So there's going to probably be a little bit of a message of, hey, folks, don't go away. The season's not over yet. In addition to the bigger picture of we want this program to be better in the long term.
Yeah, Brian, he writes into the Equitable Bank inbox. He says, "Guys, you nailed it. If Frost remained head coach, I would stop tuning in after yesterday. Now that Mickey Joseph is at the helm, I might try to go to a game. Why now? Because with Frost, I knew what I was going to get. I declined tickets to the game yesterday because it was a waste of money. Now I don't know what we'll get. It's at least interesting again, and you can't fault anyone who remains except Shenander for how it turns out. They're making the best of the situation they've been thrown into. A change is as good as a rest. Still a Big Red fan. Just hope they get good soon so that my kids can share in it before they get old enough to realize they suck." I do wonder how, I mean, that's obviously got to play a part in this, right? The number of people that could have checked out. Doug told the story of yesterday. I heard him on Overreaction, like trying to give away tickets to the game. And how it was darn near impossible. There's a lot of effort that goes into going to a football game. I mean, it took me over 2 hours to get home last night. I know it was like that for a lot of people. And so to continue to go and get kicked in the junk over and over and over and over again, I understand. I understand totally why Trev would look at that and say, we can't keep doing this. We can't keep taking the fans for granted. That was really one of the big cruxes of last night's discussion with you and Ravi. Not taking the fan base for granted. It's incredible that they still continue to show up for a team now, John, that has been 4-11 in the last season plus 3 games. 4-11, and they're still darn near full every time at Memorial Stadium. Trev knows that. You don't want to take advantage of them. You just don't want to give them any reason to be even more pissed off at the program. So yeah, I have to imagine, among other things, that has to be a reason, that led to the decision today versus at 20 days from now.
We'll get to some calls. Do we have calls lined up, Josh? We do. Okay. We'll get to some in just a second. I wanted to read this one from Brent. Brent writes, "Part of what Trev has to navigate is unanimous support of the boosters and continued interest of the fan base. If he pulled the plug after last season, it would have created another Pelini type of division. What has kept us relevant the past 2 decades are the boosters and fans. Part of moving forward is having everyone on the same page. After last night, I don't think even the most ardent Frost supporter was thinking differently. Obviously, you can't plan it out this way, but coming out of the gate 1 and 2 on the year has influencers of the program on the same page. Appreciate you guys covering this today. Better days are ahead. Interesting point there by Brent, because, last year you and I, Josh, disagreed on the decision to retain Scott Frost. We had seen enough to know that we had seen enough. But Brent's point is interesting, because while we and maybe a few others, I think somewhere on the message boards they called him the 15% or whatever it was. I know when we did our polling, I think it was like 20% were wanting him let go.
Yeah.
That actually, and the argument that we had was, well, you're wasting next season.
Yep.
You're going to be throwing away next season, because even if Scott Frost gives you 6 or 7 or even 8 wins, it'll probably be fool's gold.
Yep.
And then you're stuck with him for another year, and you're just continuing to kick this rotten can down the road. But now with everything that has worked as it has, and remember, even though the buyout is still double of what it could have been if this decision had been made 3 weeks later, it's $15 million. It's still less than it would have been at the end of last season. If it had been done at the end of last season, it would have been about $25 million. It's 15 today. So they did save some money. Maybe not as much as they could have, but they did save some money. So to Brent's point, we've now gotten, even though it took a little more evidence for others to follow along, we've now seen through 3 games enough evidence where you're going to avoid, it appears, a Pelini-like situation where there is a huge divide in the fan base. And so in the long run, this may end up being, and we don't know, but this may end up being, while it sounds maybe from a 35,000-foot view kind of premature, wow, you're firing a guy after you gave him a second chance just 3 games into the next season, you may have done a very shrewd maneuver here in an effort to keep this fan base, which is really the one thing that's holding everything together over the last 20 years, somewhat together.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, man. The division is not something that Trev Alberts wanted. The thing I guess that I am surprised by is maybe how fast people, I guess, came over to this side of the discussion, right? I was wrong. I thought it would take the whole season. I didn't think that. I definitely didn't think after game 1 that it would have changed that much. And then by game 3, I mean, there are ardent, hardcore Frost people that were like, uncle, they couldn't see it anymore. And that surprised me. And then look, maybe it makes sense. Like when I kind of sit back and I think about it and I talk about it with people, it does make sense because they made all these changes, coaches, players, and they got off to a 1-2 start. So, another they barely ever been above 500, so they're below 500 again, and they're losing games in strange ways. And look, I said it last week, and I'll probably say it a few more times. Losing with bad defense, which I guess is kind of ironic that in the end, one of the big downfalls for Frost is going to be his defense in year 5. Losing with defense, getting outscored 45-42. That it just rubs people the wrong way. It's bad football. It's bad football because you're not tackling. It's bad football because you're not wreaking havoc. And I think that just the look of that side of the ball, I think was just too much for a lot of people. And so you're right. It was a gamble. It was a really, really healthy gamble. But in the end, if Trev is able to avoid the discontent with the fan base, he is able to maybe avoid potential coaches looking at him and saying, wow, you showed up and you fired a guy 4 months onto the job. He doesn't have that hanging over him anymore now, right? Like he has, hey, look, I gave him all the support that I could. We gave him time and it just wasn't enough. So he's able to, explain this away in different conversations than maybe he could have a year ago or almost a year ago.
Producer Josh has just informed us we're clear until 3:00.
Okay.
So we might have to. I'm glad I got some water. I may have to ask the boys to get me. Yeah, but we're clear to go, so we'll be able to go pretty much relatively break free until 3:00. We might take one break before Trev, just because Trev's press conference will take place at 3:00 or around that time. I would hope that Trev will be on time. We'll of course bring you coverage of that right here on 1620 The Zone, 1620thezone.com, and 1620 The Zone TV. All right. Well, we've been talking for about an hour straight. Let's see what the callers have to say.
Mike is up first at 402-951-1620. Mike, what's going on?
Good afternoon, guys. I'm going to bang my fist on the table, and I'm going to keep saying the same thing. I've been telling my sons this and friends this, and since the firing of Frank Solich, the coaches that we brought in, some could recruit, some couldn't. But I think the huge downfall of this program over the last 20 years is the coaches that they brought in have not been able to develop talent. And I don't ever hear anybody preaching that. So I would beg whoever is out there listening that is going to go and make a decision on who they hire as a coach. First and foremost, that coach better have a great track record of being able to develop talent, and then also have that trait in them that they've shown that they can build a program. I think I would argue, even if Nick Saban had Nebraska's talent, he would still win and go to a bowl game. It's just about development of talent. And when they brought in Adrian Martinez, 4 years ago to be the quarterback, I think a lot of us Husker fans thought, wow, we got this kid for 4 years. This is going to be great. And as years progressed, he never got any better. And I think that's an indictment on Scott. It's an indictment on the coaching staff that players like that don't get any better. And me and my son were just having this conversation about the running backs this year. You talk about A.J. Allen and I'm spacing
Anthony Grant.
Anthony Grant. There you go. Those guys were developed. Well, Allen's a freshman, but Anthony Grant was developed someplace else. The running backs that we had in room haven't even seen the field. I mean, that again tells you we haven't been able to develop talent at the running back spot, and that a transfer can come in and a true freshman can come in and get significant playing time over people that have been in the program for 2 or 3 years. And they haven't been able to develop offensive linemen either. I would argue that there isn't one guy on that offensive line that I think could go and start for another Big Ten school. Maybe Prohaska. But other than that, I don't know that there's anybody else on that line that could start for another Big Ten school. So my heart aches that Scott Frost couldn't get the job done. I was excited, like probably everybody else was 5 years ago when he took the job. But I'm really, really hoping whoever Trev tells us in a couple months is the new head coach, I hope he has that player development aspect to him as a coach. It's vital, especially at a place like Nebraska. It's vital that we have a coach that can do that.
Appreciate the call.
I like what Ravi said last night, and thank you, Mike. We have a line open 402-951-1620. I like what Ravi said last night about building through the lines. I think that's pretty obvious. I think what Mike just said about the offensive line is true. I mean, so often, John, as we used to do the hits, misses, and guys exercise, we'd go look at players that Nebraska recruited 4 stars, 3 stars for the most part, and we kind of grade them hits, misses, and guys, obviously. And so often, Nebraska with the 4 stars, of which they've had a lot of offensive linemen as 4 stars under Frost. Those have been some of the biggest misses. And that's been a huge issue for them, because you look at these guys and they're competing against the Minnesotas and the Wisconsins and the Iowas, and they're winning those battles. And yet when you watch them on a game-to-game basis, they're just not good enough. And especially, I mean, what we saw last night with the defensive line, obviously they were not good enough.
Yeah, I'm looking it up, and I don't know if I updated this to grade. I did not. I have not graded last year yet, 2021 class.
We never did it this last.
No, we didn't. We didn't do it. But of the players, and we're using from the start, we've used the Rivals rating system. that there have been since we started this exercise with the 2009 class. So this is the 2009 recruiting class.
The first full class for Bo. First full class.
This class included Rex Burkhead, Jeremiah Searles, Taylor Martinez, Brandon Kinney, for example. That was the first class. Nebraska, since that time, and this is, again, not counting the 2021 recruiting class, 89 Nebraska players have been rated 4 stars or above.
Mm-hmm.
Of those 89 players who have been, and they've not had a 5-star, so
yeah,
I mean, they're all 4 stars. But of those 89, only 10 have been graded as hits. And by Josh and I's definition of a hit, it means you're all conference caliber. Some of the guys who, we always run into this. I always say guys, and then I realize that's one of our grading. But some of the players who are our hits include, just to give you an example of what we're talking about, Levante David, Lamar Jackson, Rex Burkhead,
Amir Abdullah,
Amir Abdullah, Randy Gregory. So there's an example of the caliber that grades as a hit. But 44%, 38 of the 89 players rated 4 stars since 2009 have been misses. Now, this also encompasses, obviously, the Bo Pelini era, the Mike Riley era, and early Scott Frost. But that's been the ongoing problem with Nebraska, is while they have been able to garner top 20, top 25 on a regular basis recruiting classes, which up until last year was the best of any team in the Big Ten West.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, Wisconsin finally beat Nebraska in terms of the national recruiting rankings, in terms of the overall class. But Nebraska has been consistently and easily the number 1 recruiter by the national recruiting rankings in the Big Ten West. The problem has been the lack of development at the guys at the very top of the class. And you think about the misses, Tyjon Lindsey, Wandale Robinson, Aaron Green. These are all guys who were rated 4 stars.
And by the way, it was only a miss because he left. Like, that dude was on his way.
And misses. I mean, they leave. Like Avery Roberts was a 4-star.
He turned into an all-conference player elsewhere. But they didn't like him. They didn't think he was good enough.
Exactly. Chase Harper. Remember Chase Harper? Breon Carnes.
Luke
Bubba
McCaffrey.
Starling. There's just a lot. And that's been Nebraska's biggest downfall, is development. They can't find a way to make their best players in their recruiting classes even live up to the 4-star potential, much less push them beyond that and make them All-America candidates, Player of the Year candidates, Conference Player of the Year candidates, and things of that nature. And it's been the ongoing failure of this program, and whomever Nebraska gets, listen, I don't care if you're Alabama, I don't care if you're Georgia Southern, I don't care if you're Nebraska. If you're not developing players, there's a very good chance you're not winning football games. Even Nick Saban, with the great talent that he gets every year, most of those players get better from the time they arrive on campus to the time they leave, which is why they have so many in the NFL. That's been the biggest problem Nebraska football has had for the last 2 decades, is they're not developing players. Forget the walk-ons and turning them into stars like an IM Hip, or forget about turning the 2 stars into 3 or 4 stars, or the 3 stars into 4-star type players. We're talking about the top of the class. Even if they just made the tops of their classes better, Nebraska would have been a better program.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's what this is all going to come back to. It's not going to, like, somebody brought up last night, like them getting back to the 90s, and you quickly pointed out, like, look, you're at the very base of the mountain right now. You got to get out of your car and get your gear on first before we can start talking about getting to the tippy top. And so I know that some are going to want to say, like, they got to start getting more 4 and 5 stars. Like, yes, they do, but that's not where the issue lies. The issue lies with just pure development at the very, very basic level. And if they can start with that, they can go to bowls. And if they can go to bowls, then they can challenge for divisions. If they can, and then along the line you go, and that's how you elevate yourself as a program. But this is a group, this is a university, this is a football team that needs to figure out how to make those first steps. They got to believe in themselves, man. Like, I all the 1-score loss jokes aside, like, it keeps happening. So I feel very comfortable in saying this year they're going to get blown out. It's going to happen now. And I felt that way all offseason long. But John, they got to get past this. They gotta be able to win a game. They have to be able to believe in themselves, to believe in their coaches, to believe in their teammates. And look, like, again, a lot of the questions today are why now, why now, why now? Like, there was a comment earlier from Matt that says, I'm all for the decision to move forward without Frost, but this doesn't solve our Swiss cheese defense and impotent offensive line. And it doesn't. It does not. This does not fix the offensive line. This does not fix the defense, especially. But maybe it can help with them mentally. Maybe this can allow them to win some games that they have not been able to win, that it keeps happening. They got to believe in themselves, and then after that, then start worrying about all the other issues after that.
And quite frankly, and yes, while I still think there's going to be an element of pitching hope for the rest of this season as part of the address, we read the tweet from Ted Carter a little bit ago, Nebraska system president, about how there's still a Big Ten season in the Oklahoma game to go. While there's going to be an element of hope, I think I go back to the email we got from Brent. I think a lot of today's decision is to try to keep a fan base from scattering and losing all hope. And because, again, that's been the one constant.
Mm-hmm.
Every other streak has blown up over the last 20 years. Winning streaks, bowl streaks, winning season streaks. Last night it was the winning every game in Memorial Stadium when you score 35 points. I mean, they've blown up every streak. The one constant, and a constant that continues to impress people the world over who watch college sports, is that this fan base still is sticking with the team and that they're still there, which is why, some of the stuff at the end of Scott Frost's press conference last night or what Garrett Nelson said about, I'm ignoring the voices outside. The only opinions that matter are the ones in this locker room. The us versus the world stuff blew up in Bo Pelini's face. Us against the world does not work here. Us against the world means us collectively, 1.9 million people versus the world, not us 150 or 200 people inside of a football program building a wall around the rest of the state. This fan base has kept Nebraska relevant even despite the losing. Mm-hmm. I've used the comparison many, many, many times. Nebraska football is dangerously close to going to the dust piles of history like Minnesota football. The Golden Gophers prior to 1960 were one of the great powers in all of college football with national championships and Big Ten championships. They were one of the great powers in the sport. Post 1960, they've just been another program. Nebraska, at least in terms of the wins and the losses, has developed into just another program, but they haven't totally gone into full irrelevancy or just another, face in the crowd because of the fans, because of the support. And that's a big reason why today's decision was made, was to keep everyone together and saying, hey, we're going to fix this. We're going to keep working at this, and we're going to keep trying as long as we have to finally justify all of your love, all of your support, and all of the money that you pour into this project.
Yeah, and again, there are still 9 games left, and there are a bevy of home games, including one that we thought might be perhaps a decider this week versus Oklahoma. You can't take that type of stuff for granted. By the way, I know that people are going to want to talk about coaching, who's next, and we will do that in time. I did want to read this tweet real quick though from Pete Thamel. He said names for Nebraska. And he gave a ton of names, so I'll just read them all off to you, John. Matt Campbell, Mark Stoops, Dave Aranda, Bill O'Brien, Lance Leipold, Jim Leonard, PJ Fleck, Chris Kleeman, Dave Doran, Sam Pittman, Alex Grinch, Matt Entz, Brett Bielema, Jamie Chadwell, and Troy Calhoun. So I don't know.
Wow, he named a couple of Big Ten coaches in there. He named Bielema and Fleck.
Yeah, so just wanted to read that. Those
that was one of the things I was doing when we got the news. Is I'm categorizing my coaching list in terms of home run hires, triples, doubles, and singles. And I tweeted out something earlier today, and that's an exercise certainly we can get into as the week goes on. But for right now, Mickey Joseph is the guy. Let's take some more calls if we have them.
Yep, indeed. Up next is Q. He has been waiting on hold for a little bit. Q, what's going on, man?
How's it going, guys?
Hey.
Hey. Yeah, thanks for taking my call. So your last statement, that was spot on about why I believe the decision was made right now. Because the wheels already fell off this thing. The administration is trying to keep the fans from falling off of it. And I think I've had a long running theory. This is exactly why Trev was hired, because if anybody could come in and take Scott out, if it had to come to this, he was the guy. And, you know, a lot of people don't remember, the younger folks don't remember the hard decisions Trev had to make at UNO with eliminating programs and the heat that he faced. And if there's anybody who can handle the adversity, it's going to be him. And the criticism is going to be him. And on top of that, you can't say it's not a Nebraska guy making this decision. He's got a lot of personal interest in this thing. So I honestly feel like the bigger thing here, the bigger story is Trev's hiring and the reason why he was brought in. And also, I have a question. Do you think Mickey Joseph, just your thoughts, can Luke Fickle this thing and at least stop the bleeding a little bit?
Well, that's the hope.
Q.
Yeah, that's the hope, is that he can stop the bleeding. And, you know, he's referring to when Luke Fickle took over after Jim Tressel was fired. Now, granted, that was at the very beginning of the season, not 3 games into the season, but that certainly is the hope. And I'm certain that there's going to be some folks who are going to say, well, could Mickey be a candidate? In my opinion, I don't believe he is. I mean, he does not have any head coaching experience whatsoever.
Yeah.
Now, if Nebraska were to win out, obviously there's going to be a lot of people, you know, waving the flag for Mickey Joseph. But I'm guessing, and we'll hear more from Trev here in about an hour and 15 minutes. Trev Alberts will hold a press conference at 3 that you'll be able to hear right here on 1620 The Zone, 1620thezone.com, and 1620 The Zone TV. You know, I'm sure that, you know, Mickey is one of the reasons why Mickey was chosen. First of all, he had associate head coach in the title. But the other thing, too, was you needed a guy who was, you know, going to kind of just play the overseer, the true CEO, while you try to get your coordinators to kind of run their side of things. I'm sure there were some people, and I was listening to Sip last night on the Husker Online post game, and he was saying, well, maybe Whipple, and Whipple does have head coaching experience. But I think at this point, this decision is based partially in, well, we're trying to focus on, you know, keeping the offense churning. Nebraska's offense right now is getting a 0.5 point per play, which is a really good number through 3 games. The offense has not been the reason. So why put more on Mark Whipple's plate? Let him focus on the offense. Let Shenander focus on the defense. And by the way, there's been no other words on any other changes. It's just Scott Frost that has been let go. But that's probably going to be the reasoning that Mickey Joseph was chosen was, hey, we just need someone to kind of be at the top to kind of oversee the operation. And we're going to focus, and we're going to let our coordinators focus on the things they absolutely have to try to salvage this year.
Yeah, got a comment from Jamie. Says, why are NU fans so upset about the $7.5 million of Frost being fired now versus October 2nd? Money shouldn't be a reason for NU to wait on the firing. It should have been last year, but it obviously was, and that's why Trev renegotiated the original buyout. John, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think anyone's upset about the cost. I think people are just like, why now?
I don't think
because,
so either.
because you brought him back. I think the frustration is, and I'll just, I guess, kind of keep repeating myself. This season is lost. This season is lost, and it's hard not to get a little frustrated when you look at, you know, I mean, Indiana and Rutgers are what they are. Purdue, I think, is solid. Illinois might have taken a step back. We'll see. Minnesota looks like they've improved, but Wisconsin and Iowa definitely have taken a step back this year. I feel very comfortable in saying that. And so you look at the division and you say, could they have won the division in year one under a new coach? Probably not. Could they have gotten off to a really good start, though, and maybe earned some goodwill and maybe brought the fan base and unified the fan base together a little bit more after the loss of Frost had they moved on? I think that is certainly in the cards. That said, you hit on something earlier that is sticking with me a lot, and we're going to keep talking about it, I'm sure, and that is the unification of the fan base, because the start of this year was like so obvious that a change needed to happen. They were not improving. They are not better. They are worse. The defense, we'll see what happens this year. The defense definitely looks like it's the worst defense that they have had in the Frost now post-Frost era. So like that, they've regressed there. They still had boneheaded decisions. The onside kick, like all of the changes, all of the new coaches, all of the new players, and it was the same song, maybe with just a different riff on it, a different bass line, a different chorus, but in the end, it's still the same song. And so I think I think it just kind of hit everybody, and I underestimated how much that would hit people to start this year. But it seems like it really hit people right away. Like, damn, this is the same stuff, different year. I don't want to deal with this anymore.
You're listening to breaking news coverage on 1620 The Zone, 1620thezone.com, and 1620 The Zone TV, also the Zone mobile app. Scott Frost has been fired after 4+ seasons as Nebraska head football coach. Athletic Director Trev Alberts made the statement in a press release at 12:30 this afternoon. A press conference featuring Trev Alberts will begin at 3 o'clock our time, and we will bring that to you live here on 1620 The Zone. I believe there's also going to be efforts to also simulcast that on our sister stations, 101.9 The Keg and 1180 The Zone. Producer Josh putting up the graphic for us. That is the text of the statement from earlier today. Mickey Joseph will serve as the interim head coach for the remainder of the season. We want to show you some video, Josh.
Actually, real quick, John, before we get to the video,
go ahead.
Ronnie Green just released a statement, and here's what he had to say. Today's decision by AD Trev Alberts to change the leadership of the Husker football program was a very difficult one, but is the right decision for Nebraska athletics, our student athletes, and the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Scott approached his job and role as a Nebraskan would with heart, hard work, and absolute commitment. I know he gave it his all, just as he did as a leading player. Unfortunately, after the disappointing beginning to what we all hoped would be a fresh start, it is time to make a change. Jane and I wish Scott and all of his family the best, as I know all Nebraskans do. Trev has made a good choice in asking associate coach Mickey Joseph to step in as interim head coach for the rest of the year, and we eagerly look forward to his leadership. So that was Ronnie Green, a statement just coming down from him.
And we read a statement earlier from University System President Ted Carter that basically echoed those sentiments. So Trev Alberts certainly has the support of the brass above him, a brass who, by the way, at least Green, was wholeheartedly behind the decision to hire Bill Moose, who, of course, then hired Scott Frost. And that's another perhaps topic for another time, is, how Nebraska's administration continues to stub their toe as well. We all remember, the criticisms of Harvey Perlman in the moment, but this was basically the same administration. And I know it wasn't Ted Carter at that point. It was Hank Bounds. But how gung-ho they were about going and getting Bill Moose. And then it seemed like it was a foregone conclusion that Moose was brought in for one thing, and that was to hire Scott Frost. Obviously, Moose did some other things as well, including hiring Fred Hoiberg, but the administration, certainly has a little bit of dirt on their hands when it comes to this whole situation. But they are in full support of Trev Alberts, and they obviously made the move last summer to remove Bill Moose prematurely. And I say prematurely as in, they let him go before he was ready to go. And then bring in Trev Alberts. So, yeah, the role of the administration is going to be rather interesting, but they've put the decision and the ball in Trev Alberts' hands, and we're going to see what he does with it. Here is some exclusive video, courtesy of KOLN KGIN 1011 here in Lincoln. Kevin Suit, sports director, I believe, and I haven't seen this yet. So for those of you watching in the stream, this is apparently Scott Frost leaving the football facility today after the meeting with Trev Alberts. Now, for those on the radio, obviously you're not going to see it. We'll kind of narrow. Dinged on the side of his truck. Look, his side of his truck was damaged. Like,
by the way, John, you were muted the whole time the video played, so you'll have to recap it for the folks on the radio.
Oh, I'm sorry. The video just showing Scott Frost leaving the facility.
Gave a hug to somebody. I couldn't tell who it was, but he hugged somebody.
I can hit it up again here real quick. I don't recognize him off the top. It looked like one of the support staff.
Yeah, that's what I figure.
And then the truck was seen driving off. Now, what happens to Scott Frost, we don't know, but he's in line to pick up a $15 million check for his buyout, and we'll move on. What becomes of him, we don't know. I've always believed that if he is still interested in coaching, he might make a good candidate for the Nick Saban School of Coaching Rehabilitation. We've seen other coaches go that route. In fact, one of Nebraska's current candidates, perhaps Bill O'Brien, coaching under Nick Saban right now. I don't know if he's going to have coaching in his future, but if he is, he might be one of the next guys to go that route, and it would probably be a good one because it seems like everyone who comes in as dirty laundry leaves Nick Saban's program a cleaner person. But again, who knows what's going to become of Scott Frost for the rest of his coaching career?
I would be surprised. I just don't see that happening. I don't see him going there. I've had a theory for a while, and I think I've said it on the air. If I haven't, I'll say it now. I don't think we're going to see or hear much from him moving forward. I think he might just be done. I just wonder about how bad this thing ended, and some of that is informed, but some of it's just my theory in general. I think this is it. I think he's going to go to Arizona, and I think he's just going to live out his days. I don't definitely think we're going to see him back in the state again. I think this is it.
402-951-1620. You're listening to live breaking coverage. Scott Frost has been fired. Trev Alberts press conference here in approximately 1 hour live from Lincoln. Let's go back to the Les Hills Harley-Davidson hotline.
That is where Greg awaits. Been waiting very patiently, at least we hope. Greg, what's going on, man?
Not a surprise. That's what's going on. The ESPN dinged off today, and before I even picked up the phone, I said out loud, University of Nebraska at Lincoln fires Scott Frost, and sure as crap, that's what it was. This has been a hard 5 years. I was all for Scott Frost, and I wanted him to succeed. Sometimes things don't work out. I wish him the best, but this kind of losing streak, this isn't Nebraska football, nothing that we all know. So you got to move on. And I honestly think the reason why you do it now is because of what happens this next week. You got big noon kickoff in Lincoln. You got Oklahoma. You got to change the narrative. You don't want to go in with the failure of a coach and on national TV anymore. Like, if I'm like, that's why I think they did it now, was because of this next week and the narratives that's going on in Lincoln, and they just wanted to change it. But hopefully the next guy is has a proven track record again in developing talent and recruiting, and he has a track record of winning. I'm not saying that Scott Frost didn't have a track record of winning, but some of those players that he did win a fake national championship with weren't his.
Yep.
The first year he was there at UCF, he had a losing record, so he really didn't have a proven track record. But I was all for bringing, the native son back and deliver us to the promised land. But again, sometimes things don't work out the way you envision them, and we just move forward from here. And Nebraska, Husker Nation, don't get caught up. If Mickey Joseph takes us bowling, don't wave the flag for him. I wouldn't want him to leave the university, but I don't think he's the ideal candidate for the next head coach. But anyway, guys, go Big Red, and the sky, we can see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. I agree with you, Greg. I agree with you, by the way, Greg. This is no time for an experiment. This is no time for first timers.
Plus, I don't know if Mickey wants the job.
No,
so
I don't
think he does.
I don't think he does either. Obviously, he wanted to come back. He wanted to make a difference with the wide receivers. He's obviously been really, really good on the recruiting trail. And plus that, he's, oh gosh, what would he be now? He's about 50. He's older than me, so he's like 52, 53.
So he's 100?
Yeah, stop.
He's 54.
54. That's a little late in the game to be starting as a head coach. Again, I think he's put in this position so that the coordinators can solely concentrate on their sides of the ball and trying to make those sides of the ball the best they possibly can be. And Mickey's just going to kind of oversee things. And as a guy who is such a good recruiter, that's still something that you're considering as you move forward for the rest of the season. Just a couple of tweets that I saw from either Nebraska commits or potential Husker commits. Malachi Coleman, the wide receiver from Lincoln East, just simply tweeted, "Wow." And Jaden Doss, a wide receiver commit, tweeted out a little while ago, "I've been getting a lot of messages about my recruitment and Nebraska. At this time, I'm concentrating right now is my RAPEC team and having a great senior year." But, keeping the recruiting class together in some way and to keep at least some form of stability. And that'll be another interesting thing too, Josh, and I think we're both in agreement that, Mickey Joseph's not going to be the head coach next year and beyond. But if Mickey Joseph is kept by whoever the new person is, because he's going to be that stabilizing force. And I don't mean to use this example as a perfect one-to-one. Hey, look at that. The Bears scored a touchdown. But the one-to-one corollary, but there was, when Bill Callahan took over, they did keep Turner Gill around the program as a stabilizing force. Now, again, some of that was kind of artificially done and almost looked like a token measure by Steve Peterson and Bill Callahan to keep some Nebraska around. But this isn't keeping a Mickey Joseph around, wouldn't be just to keep some Nebraska around, but it's somebody who's obviously got some great value to the product and has an intimate knowledge of what's going on and a great recruiter. I think Mickey Joseph is a tremendous wide receivers coach.
Yeah.
And,
I think he'll be on the staff.
And is a great asset. So, Mickey's not going to be the permanent answer, but it does make sense from a structural standpoint for the remaining 75% of this season why he's put in this spot today.
John, plus, he allows the coordinators to coordinate. And look, people might say, I don't want that with Chenander right now. But it allows for the coordinators to focus on that. Like, that's why you don't make Whipple the guy. So Whipple can focus on the offensive side of the ball. A couple of tweets real fast. And I've seen this noted a couple of spots, but Beamar points out, while this goes down a day after Carol Frost is honored on the field by Trev Alberts during the game. I don't know if you knew that, but yeah, they honored her.
I did not.
Yeah, and I was up in the booth and I was next to Helfrich, and he, I'm just whatever, and he points out, he goes, "Well, hey, Carol, they're honoring Carol Frost." And sure enough, they were. So, yeah, the timing of this is interesting to say the least. And then more of a question then that we can answer from Sipples Lost T. How hard of a sell is the program for Trev at this moment? He's got to put up one hell of a calming front, doesn't he? I think he can, for the record. I mean, here's the sell. I guess if Sipples Lost T is asking with the fan base, he's going to have some explaining. But I think, John, he hit on it earlier, and I think it's a really valid point. Like, in a way, bringing him back and allowing this to be so obvious that there's no division, that is going to be a good thing. So you can kind of start and end there. With in terms of the job, look, you're in one of the two leagues that matters. You are in the Big Ten. The money is there. The revenue is there.
You've got the resources
there. This is another just odd thing in all this. The new facility that Scott Frost was involved in the planning for is also going to be there as well.
And by the way, the new coach is going to be able to come in and have some influence. I know there's a lot of things in the design, but it's not, I don't know if it's so far along that a new coach can't come in and say, yeah, I want to do this and I want to do that. I mean, I think there's still an opportunity there to have some influence on how you want that program to be built, not just from a human or personal or human resources perspective, but also from a facilities perspective, which might be a selling point for Nebraska that, is a strength for them if they're competing, with other big time programs for a similar spot.
Exactly. So they have obviously that to offer. Look, the playoff's going to be expanding. And so you look at the Big Ten Conference, and the SEC is going to be able to say the same thing. And you say, hey, if we're a top 4 team in the league, we don't have to be better than Ohio State. We don't have to be better than Michigan. We don't have to be better than whomever the third team is at the moment. We just got to be the 4th best team. We can be a regular or a semi-regular team in the playoff, because I think the Big Ten most years will get 3 to 4, and in some years more teams in the playoff. So it's a hell of a job to be able to sell to. And I go back to how it all started, this conversation, and that's the money. The coffers, they're going to have the money to offer. They're going to have the money. They're going to have the resources. So, and look, they have the fan base. Fans still showing up to watch this, winless, not winless, they win games, but this horrible, horrible football program. There is a lot to sell. Is it difficult? Yes, but every coach over the last 20 years has shown you can still get top 25 talent in here. After that, it's you, man. It's developing, it's coaching them up. So it's a good job. It's still a good job. It will be a good job until it is not. But for the time being, it is still a really good job. So I actually don't think that the sale of it or selling the job, I just don't think it's going to be that hard. I really, really don't.
No, it's not. At bare minimum, it's going to be, you got to do the math. At worst, it's going to be the 32nd best job in college football, because you got 16 teams in the SEC starting in a couple years, and you'll have 16 teams in the Big Ten. Those two conferences automatically move ahead of everybody else in college football because of the revenues that they're getting.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that Nebraska is a better job than a lot of their peers in the Big Ten because of all the things that you just mentioned, the still fan support and the tradition and everything else. So yes, this is a job that you can sell to a lot of people. Now, I say that, and there's going to be some folks who are going to say, well, man, you got to shoot for the moon on this one.
You're going to have to settle for getting halfway, probably.
Yeah, you're not gonna get Dabo Swinney. All right, I'll just throw that name out there, for example. You're not going to get him because he's already got a plum job, and he's probably in line to take the plumbest job in a few years when Nick Saban leaves. So I don't think that's in the cards. But you're going to be able to get some really attractive candidates and candidates that can be very successful here. And Nebraska is going to be able to pay. I said this a couple of months ago. I think at minimum, the next head coach will make at least $7 to $7.5 million a year here.
And they need to. They need to.
And quite frankly, I might be undershooting it because you've already seen, hell, Mel Tucker's making $10 million a year. I mean, the bar is already being raised for guys who are a tier or two tiers below the Nick Sabans, the Dabo Sweeneys, the Ryan Days, the Lincoln Rileys of the world. So, yeah, Nebraska is going to want to be in that group. So it's going to be very attractive from a financial standpoint. It's going to be very attractive from a facility standpoint because you're going to have a say in how the facilities end up looking. It's going to be very attractive because it's a supported job. It's going to be very attractive because you're in one of the two biggest conferences in college football. You're going to be able to sell an awful lot.
Yeah,
to
Matt,
make this successful.
Matt says the worst part of the Nebraska coaching carousel is the repeated talking points. 1, can't recruit here. Lie. 2, no coach wants this job. Lie. 3, if previous coach couldn't do it, nobody can. Lie. I hate it. And look, that's not to say, because I saw a comment from, I got to scroll. Keefus, delusional to think that Nebraska is not a hard sell. Look, man, like it has so much to offer. It has so much to offer. And like you said, if Michigan State can give a coach $10 million, Nebraska needs to get in that neighborhood. And if they don't, then it's kind of admitting like,
and it's on them.
Yeah, where they're going to stand. And I know it's harder than a lot of schools. Like you got to recruit. You got to recruit harder.
It's always going to be a little bit harder to win here, but that does. I mean, most competitors like a challenge. I mean, if you're a competitor, you love a challenge. You're going to be able to get someone good in here. Now, again, you're not going to go pluck away one of the top 5 perceived coaches in all of college football. You're not going to be able to get those guys because they're not going to leave a situation that's already great to just start over again unless you run into a situation like Jimbo Fisher was in a few years ago, where he and the Florida State brass were clearly not seeing eye to eye, and A&M was able to swoop in and say, hey, we can give you everything that you want and more. Now, if there's a guy like that out there, if there's another Jimbo Fisher-like situation out there where you have a top-tier coach who isn't seeing eye to eye with his administration, Nebraska could be like that. Quite honestly, though, I don't see that person out there, but there's a lot of good candidates out there who have pretty good jobs right now, who are doing really good things right now that can come in and win because they're going to have everything, every advantage that you can't get just anywhere else. Nebraska needs to shoot for that. At bare minimum, it needs to be on my list, a doubles hire, but I think they need to at least get a triple in this thing to show the world how important this situation is and show their fans how much they are committed to making this program what it used to be.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
402-951-1620, Les Hills Harley Davidson hotline.
Let's go back there. We have a couple lines open, by the way, at 402-951-1620. Rhett has been waiting. Rhett, what's going on?
Oh, hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, so a couple things. Last night I'm at the game, and it's an amazing game. They have the good, celebration kind of red, we are this nation type deal at the end of the third. Then as soon as we start the fourth quarter, we have to call a timeout because of personnel issues. I just couldn't believe the coaching staff's letting these guys out on the field, not talking to them, taking in the scenery. Instead, when we're in a game that's a dogfight, we're not even coaching our kids. It just took me by total surprise. The whole Scott Frost thing, everybody can see the writing on the wall. I'm sort of shocked that he's not going to at least have a press conference set up sometime soon, because I'm surprised he took the whole buyout. I felt like he owed it to us to do a little bit better than he did. So I'm surprised that he's taken the whole buyout. But it was just one of those things where I think pride got the best of him. He really just would not listen to anybody, and he would stick to his game plan. It just was not working. And I agree with you guys as well, saying like he'll probably ride off in the sunset, because I don't think he's damaged goods. I just don't think he'll want to coach again. And I don't know. I just kind of want to see what you guys kind of think about the whole, Oklahoma game, how the team's going to react to this, because I think they're going to come out on fire, and I'd like to get your take on it. And then my sister, she's a September 11th kid, and she has her birthday day, so I wanted to wish her happy birthday. And I was kind of surprised they didn't have a September 11th memorial yesterday at the game during halftime or something. So just love your guys' show, and thanks for taking my call.
Hey, thanks for the call, Rhett. We appreciate it. 402-951-1620. Happy birthday to your
daughter. Yeah, your sister.
Oh, daughter? Sister?
Did I say daughter?
I thought it was sister.
It was I don't know. Female kind. Happy birthday.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about Oklahoma. I honestly have no idea. We've seen these types of games, right, where teams have come out, like you said, with their hair on fire, and they played really well after a coach has gotten let go. We've seen other times where it's just like, oh boy, it's kind of lost. The thing is, like this firing is so unique in a variety of ways, but the timing of it is, it's just so early. It's so early. I mean, John, they got done with fall camp just a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
The opener was 15 days ago, man. So it's so early in the season. So in a way, I don't know. I don't know if this will galvanize them and bring them together, or if there is division in the locker room and it'll be the opposite. Well, I guess we'll find out, and then they'll have a bye week. And I think like we're gonna all want to have takes right after the Oklahoma game. It probably best to save some of like the really big picture ones for the rest of the year until after that. Though maybe we should just. It's gonna be hard to have them this year because they might just play so up and down the remainder of the season. That wouldn't surprise. Nothing I don't think would surprise me beyond the defense turning itself around. That would really surprise me. Otherwise, not so much.
Yeah, what becomes of the rest of the season, and I believe that part of what today will be about is trying to sell at least a little bit of hope, because that's what you have to do in these spots. It's not just about, hey, we're going to be good in 2024 and beyond, or 2023 and beyond, but we're going to do everything we can to still put a product on the field that you can be proud of for the rest of this season. And while that may be a difficult sell after what we've seen the first 3 weeks, one thing that we know about Nebraskans, and I've said this about them before, the Nebraska fan base is like a rubber band. They snap back. And if Trev, and I trust that he will, because he's a very media savvy person, we'll have a message that people can get behind, and at least give them a little bit of hope. Now, does that mean they're going to go out and shock Oklahoma next week, or at least be as good as they were against Oklahoma last year? I don't know about that, but part of today's message will be about selling hope for the rest of the year. This division, Minnesota looks really good, but the rest of the division, not so good, not so much. There's still, dare I say, a winnable game.
A winnable game.
There are still winnable games left on this schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And if Nebraska can get their stuff together, we know this much: it's not the offense's fault. Special teams, but at least they haven't been a disaster. It's really, 90% of this has been defensive so far. And I don't know if those things necessarily can be fixed overnight, but who knows?
Dude, look at the last two drives of the game. Casey Thompson, 98 yards. Down the field, gives them the lead, which the defense relinquished. And then did he get them far enough on the last drive? No, but they ran out of time, and he got them in field goal range.
They didn't have much time, and they were still in position to try to kick a tying field goal.
And the distance was there. So yeah, it's that's the part about all of this. Mentally, it's a weak program. It's very fragile, and they got to get that stuff figured out. But I mean, the defense it's a problem. And if they can't get that fixed, they can be the closest group ever now. It's not going to matter, and they're still going to lose football games because they can't stop anybody, and especially when November rolls around and they're playing those Big Ten West teams.
All right, 402-951-1620. It's the Les Hills Harley-Davidson hotline. We'll be with you here for the balance of the next 45 minutes until Trev Alberts speaks. Trev Alberts is scheduled to speak at 3 o'clock from Lincoln. We'll have live coverage of that right here on 1620 The Zone, 1620thezone.com, and the Zone mobile app, 1620 The Zone TV as well, our YouTube channel. So many ways that you can absorb us. We really appreciate everyone being out there here this afternoon and kind of cutting into your opening NFL Sunday. Some interesting games, to say the least. San Francisco's only up 3 on the Bears. Eagles are pulling away. Bengals are starting to come back on Pittsburgh. So we appreciate, even with all that excitement going on, that you've decided to spend at least a little bit of time with us. We'll get more of your thoughts, your calls, your reactions as we continue. Again, 402-951-1620 on the Les Hills Harley-Davidson hotline. Josh and I are going to take a quick break, and we will be right back with more of our special breaking news coverage. Scott Frost fired after 4+ seasons as Nebraska's head coach. On 1620 The Zone, 1620thezone.com, and Zone TV.
You can join us every week for the Sharp and Betting podcast. It's Sharp and Betting. We got a podcast driven by our good friends at Woodhouse Auto Family.
Yeah, the cool thing about it is we'll get more in depth on a lot of your favorite topics, have a guest or two, and just might drop some nuggets of information that you've never heard before.
Wherever you get your podcasts, just look for Sharp and Betting. We got a podcast driven by Woodhouse Auto Family each Friday. You can find it on the Sharp and Betting show page on 1620thezone.com. It's Sharp and Betting. We got a podcast.
Texting enrolls you into recurring automated text messages. Message and data rates may apply. If you are a man over 40, listen up, because this could impact how much you're getting done during the day and at night. The harsh reality is, once you hit 40, your body has less free testosterone. Here's the good news. Nugenix, the #1 selling testosterone booster at GNC, has changed the game again for men over 40 with Nugenix Total T. And guys all over America are raving about it. Jeremy P. says, this is the best product I found to raise T levels. And how about Shane D? He says, I had no drive and was tanked out at the end of the day. After 3 months, my energy level is through the roof. I work out like most 19-year-olds. I am 47. Guys over 40, you need Nugenix Total T. And right now, you can get a complimentary bottle. Just text HOT to 42424. It's the #1 selling free testosterone booster at GNC.
I assume, Josh, you just turned off the commercials in our headsets.
Is he frozen? Oh, no, there he is. Josh?
Did you just turn the commercials off in our headsets? Okay, thank you. No problem.
Now they get to hear us eat.
That's right, man. We're eating.
Yes, we know the
nuggets and 2 French fries.
Peter, the mics, they got it. They have to stay on.
Well, I can mute mine.
I guess we can mute it. Yeah.
You know what?
No, they gotta listen to it.
How about them Eagles? 31-14.
Bummer. I had a cheesesteak.
I've had the Niners game on, but I haven't watched any of it, so I have no idea if it's the field conditions, the weather conditions, or if it's just crappy Trey Lance. But I mean, the Bears have a ball in midfield, down 3. And Lamar just hit a 70-yard touchdown.
Many people are commenting on the lack of commercials in the food that we're eating.
Well, hey, for those of you watching in the stream, you get to see the stuff behind the scenes. You hear the stuff behind the scenes. For those on the radio, they get a commercial.
I haven't had I've had so little food today. I'm very hungry.
Chris made I had a couple of pancakes this morning when I woke up at 10. That was a long night.
Josh, it's exclusive content. Yeah, people, you always wonder what it's like behind the scenes at a radio station. Here you go. We eat.
This is what it is.
Yeah.
This is what it is.
Yeah. Also, John usually is pacing.
Yeah, I'm not getting my steps in. This is not good.
Dude, I know. I'm gonna
be walking Wrigley extra long tonight.
Yeah, I feel so bad for Banks. We had literally just gotten in the car. We were about to go to my parents, and he was so jacked. And then I got the text, and he's like, wait, what? We're getting back out of the car?
Yeah.
Poor guy.
I assume Josh will hear the bump when we're back on radio. Welcome back. Alongside Josh Peterson, I'm John Bishop. At 1620 The Zone's breaking news coverage. Scott Frost has been relieved of duties after 4+ seasons as Nebraska head coach. Trev Alberts making the statement. It's been almost 2 hours now since the press release came out. His press conference is scheduled to start at the top of the hour at 3 o'clock. We'll bring you live coverage right here on 1620 The Zone, 1620thezone.com. And Zone TV. Been taking your calls and comments throughout the afternoon. 402-951-1620. What do we have out there on the Les Hills Harley-Davidson Hub?
We have a few folks, including a line open right now at 402-951-1620, but we have Jeff, Matt, and Will. Jeff is up next. Hello, Jeff, at 402-951-1620.
Hey, guys. How are you today?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. Just wanted to make a few comments, starting with something that John said last night on overreaction, that a lot of this was about the accountability or the lack thereof. Maybe waiting till October 1st to save money shows a lack of accountability by the program. I think that no doubt the loss sealed its fate. So why wait 3 weeks? Just take the hit and say, look, we're being accountable to this and we have to move forward. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was originally I was going to make comments about recruiting, but you guys, hit that topic pretty well. I was wondering what your insights would be on how are we not developing the players? Are they not helping these kids believe in themselves? Are they not helping the kids believe in the program? What insights would you guys have into why we're not taking all these 4-stars and turning them to, at least functional Big Ten players?
Thanks for the call, Jeff. John, I got an answer for that. And it sounds so simplistic, but I think a lot of it just comes down to not being good enough coaches. That's
the easiest answer. And I would also add, Josh, that some of it, not all of it, but some of it is, yes, they've taken some 4-star athletes, but I think they were either poor system fits or poor personality fits. Again, not all of them, but I think some of it was a bit of reaching on Nebraska's part to, try to swing for the fence and hit a home run with a player that maybe didn't quite fit their locker room, their culture, or their style.
Yeah, I think that can be a huge part of it. I mean, you look back at the original staff, everyone was essentially a group of 5. I mean, they were all from UCF. And I don't want to do revisionist history all day, but I mean, it was a group that had been at a group of 5 school, and he could have tried to bring in different coaches, right? Like, look at the staff that Brent Venables just put together. Look at the staff that he just put together at Oklahoma. I think that's what you see from the best coaches in the country, or the ones that are, I guess, maybe trying a little bit more, is they put together those types of staff. So, like, that's where it started. It began there. And while the defense has made incremental gains, I know that we argued about it, and sometimes we jokingly argued about it, but the reason that I never still was able to get on the Chenander bandwagon with people was they just weren't they were never game changers. They were always just good enough. And I think that he got graded on an incredible curve because he was the guy that everyone wanted fired at the very beginning. And
or you wanted fired at the very beginning.
I didn't want him hired. I thought that they should have hired better, and I stand behind that.
Well, and I agree with your overall sentiment too.
Yeah. But because me and others were like, hey, he's not good enough, and he exceeded our really, really, really low expectations. I think it's like if a D student suddenly gets a C. It's like, hey, congrats on the improvement, but is the C exactly? So I think that a lot of it's that. I mean, look, I still think that this system, I think it can work in this conference if you have really good coaches and you have really good players. I mean, like, look at Anthony Grant. Look at what he's able to do. He's a really, really, really good football player. And he single-handedly has helped at times the offense score or stay in games or whatever. That guy is a game changer. They've not had those types of guys. Think of the skill players, not quarterbacks. Think of the wide receivers and running backs and tight ends that they have had that have been true game changers in the Frost era. How many guys are you going to name? I'll name Anthony Grant. I'll name Stanley Morgan. I'll name Wan'Dale Robinson. I'll name J.D. Spielman. I named one running back and three receivers, and two of those receivers were short and small and slight. So think about that. That has been like the skill talent. If they had an Anthony...
I'll throw in JoJo. I'll throw in JoJo Doman.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about offense.
Yeah.
But so view it from the perspective of, what if they had an Anthony Grant equivalent every year? Guessing the offense would have been a lot better. I'm guessing that they would have a few more wins. They just have not been able to have that. So
But you know what you didn't name? No defensive linemen were named. No offensive linemen were named. And I agree with what Robbie said last night. Whoever comes in next, they need to be line focused. They need to make sure, because that's the other place where Nebraska has failed over the years, is when you go back through the history of the successful teams, they've all had good to great to exceptional offensive lines, good to great to exceptional defensive lines. It all starts on the line of scrimmage. As much as this game has spread from sideline to sideline, or as Doc said, you say baseline to baseline, as much as it is spread that way, great teams don't happen without great offensive and defensive line play. And that's also where Nebraska has fallen woefully short. And that was an area where, they used to be really, really good, for a very long time, very consistently. Even their off seasons were off for them. Damon talks about being the standard. Nebraska set its own standard. Now Nebraska's been trying to figure out, what is our standard?
Yeah.
And they've been struggling with that ever since.
Yeah.
402-951-1620. Let's go back to the Los Hills Harley-Davidson hotline.
And that is where Matt awaits us. Matt, good afternoon. You're on 1620 The Zone special coverage of Scott Frost's firing.
Well, thank you guys, and thank you for coming in or getting to your kitchen tables and putting this together today.
Yeah.
My thing, when you usually have a firing or a hiring like this, it's not just with the coaches, but within the department itself. And I'm specifically wondering what you might think will happen with Matt Davison. He's probably the only one that feels that this probably shouldn't have happened. And also he was, seemed to be quite on top of the list there of getting Frost here. I'm wondering what your opinion might be of him within the athletic department itself. Again, thanks guys, and have a good day.
Thanks for the call, Matt.
Well, that's kind of an interesting sidebar to this conversation. Obviously, the public face of Matt Davison is the guy on the radio broadcast, but his more important work has been behind the scenes as a fundraiser. And obviously, when Frost was first hired, he was basically the conduit, the go-between that made that whole thing possible. I really don't know. I don't know, because this decision does not get made without very influential people with big pocketbooks standing behind Trev Alberts. I think it's now a foregone conclusion. One of the reasons why this wasn't done last year was because you still had some very influential people with deep pockets who were very much in Scott Frost camp. That obviously has changed. Matt Davison's, one of his jobs is to, raise that money and be that relationship between the university and the big money boosters. So I really don't know where this goes, but it could be another one of those interesting minefields that Trev Alberts has to deal with behind the scenes that is not going to play out as much in public If there is, a rift, or if, Davison feels like, hey, I've got to stick with my friend. But, he also has a family. He also has, a life to lead as well. So that's one of the things about college, about just being in organized sports, major sports anyway, is sometimes, you can make friends in this business, but sometimes your friends are the people you're competing against. And sometimes the friends are folks that, have to make decisions that go against your own personal interests. And it's hard to keep and maintain friendships in businesses like this because of those factors.
Yeah, I'm looking at his Huskers.com page. His title there, it obviously doesn't mention the radio, Senior Associate AD, External Engagement. He was someone that was as you mentioned, the conduit back in 2017. I think, there's a lot of blame to go around. I have always wondered about what Matt said to Frost in terms of describing the roster, and saying what he did. It got off to such a strange start in terms of the PR game, where outright lies were being said by the Frost regime about weightlifting or lack thereof, squats and lack thereof.
Yeah.
Matt, very famously had, as J.D. Spielman set the record for most receiving yards versus Ohio State in a game. Granted, Nebraska was getting killed in 2017. Famously, his reaction to it on the radio ruffled some feathers of fans. And so, given that he is in the athletic department itself, and the ties that he has to Frost, I've also wondered. Going back to the phone call, I've wondered about that. I wonder about ABM. I wonder about Jared Lambrecht.
Yeah, that actually may be more important than in this whole conversation, because ABM started by Jared Lambrecht. John Bruning is behind it, the former attorney general, both close friends with Scott Frost. That's been at least to this point, the primary NIL source for Nebraska football. And, a lot of the big money behind some of the acquisitions, like O'Shawn Mathis, for example. And we know that, behind the scenes, there's some folks who weren't totally kosher or comfortable with that relationship. That's probably the minefield that, Trev Alberts is more worried about at this point than the Davison minefield, because ABM
got to have NIL figured out in this area.
Have NIL figure out, which is why there's this new Omaha group that apparently is coming online that may have some backing, more with the Alberts side of the ledger. But that's one of the more interesting things to watch behind the scenes, because if Nebraska is going to continue to be towards the front of the pack in the NIL conversation, having all of those ducks in a row, and those are hard ducks to organize, even in good times, having all those ducks in a row is going to be vitally important.
John, I want to read this email because we are 28 minutes away from Trev speaking, so I guess it allows us to theorize for just a moment. KG asks, there has to be way more than the situation of Fire Frost after the third game, besides not being able to coach for what he was hired to do and to make all the changes in the offseason. Will we ever know? What are you expecting that we will or will not learn from Trev when he speaks in a half hour? Do you how deep do you think he is willing to go? Because how I always have thought about this, and we've talked about it before, he is going to hire somebody else. And so you can't just air all this dirty laundry.
I would be stunned.
Yeah, I would
too. Trev aired a lot of dirty laundry.
But you have to also say, you have to explain you were not willing to, a reason to keep him last year was money. And you said that. You are now making the same decision for that money. What changed? And so there has to, and he maybe he leans on the wins and the losses, not the win, the losses. He leans on the losses. Maybe he leans on the sloppiness, that it does still look similar. But I do wonder, I had that anecdote earlier. I was told by one of my sources that he actually wanted to do this after the Ireland game. He wanted to do this after the loss to Northwestern. Some of the legal side of things inside of the university brass, they talked him out of it and said, no, the buyout's going to go down in a little over a month. Wait until then. Obviously, now he has not waited a month.
Right.
And so we've all said that. What happened in Ireland? Well, the listener then followed up with that within the last hour and a half, with a picture I know of the players making the rounds at the Guinness thing. I can't imagine that landed well with him. Is there more to that trip? Because it really does seem that game and that moment and all that was entailed in the Ireland trip and the loss to Northwestern, it seemed like that was a huge turning point. And it maybe not turning point because the point had already been turned, but that kind of seemed like a deal breaker for a lot of people. Why? And maybe I'm guessing on the record probably won't get the answer we're going to want. But off the record, I'm sure that we'll learn some things.
Our Connor Happer is in Lincoln at Memorial Stadium. He just tweeted out a photo just a little bit ago. Some of the players are out on the field getting some stretching in. So the day-to-day, as much as the day-to-day activities continue and under such awkward circumstances are continuing, no doubt trying to keep as normal a schedule as possible because there's still a game this week and 75% and most of your conference season left to go before this thing all wraps up, and who knows where Nebraska football goes after that. I as far as the dirty laundry, I would be very surprised if Trev Alberts got very personal about this. I think he'll be very vague in that. In some of the things that he says, but there's no question one of the main reasons why this is happening today is because those two were not on the same page and really have not been on the same page from the beginning. And it was really mostly financial and political things that kept Trev Alberts from making this decision last year in the first place. As we've said many times, Trev's a savvy guy. He knows when and when not to say certain things. And quite frankly, today's not a day. While, yes, we would love to hear details and we would love to understand more of the why. When you're trying to, sell optimism, sell hope, sell the future, you also want to be careful not to do the missteps that Scott Frost himself made in his first off season by continually looking in the rearview mirror and saying, oh, but look at what those guys did. Look at how bad these guys were. Look at how poorly trained. Look at how bad of a situation I inherited. Trev's going to want to try to make it sound like, hey, our next guy is going to inherit something that is good. Our next guy is going to inherit something that he can build off of. And so Trev himself, I don't think, is going to want to play too much rear view mirror. Obviously, there's going to have to be some things explained as to why you're making this decision today versus waiting until October the 1st. But I think I would predict that it's going to be extremely vague in nature. And most of what today will be about is, dare I say, a bit of a pep talk for the Husker Nation to say, hey, stand behind us. We're making that. We're doing this. We're making this tough decision when we're making it earlier than anybody else in college football because we want you to believe that we can be a great program again.
Yeah, absolutely.
402-951-1620. Back to the Les Hills Harley-Davidson hotline. We're going to stay commercial-free until just before the top of the hour. We'll take one break prior to Trev Alberts speaking at 3 o'clock. You're muted, Josh. Josh Peterson.
There he is. Hey, sorry, there we go. Will is up next at 402-951-1620. Will, what's going on?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. Comment and a question. If you look back at UCF, Fernander had an offense that was putting up 40-plus a game consistently. I don't think that he was – why Scott brought him with him, I just don't know, unless he expected to have, an offense at Nebraska that was going to score 40-plus a game. Maybe he should have been fired a couple of years ago. But question, and if you guys talked about it, I apologize. Do you think there's going to be a mass exodus of players, offensive players? We got a lot of guys that sit on the sideline that could probably, start for some other team. Do you think there's going to be a mass exodus? Thanks for taking my call.
Hey, Will, real quick, do you mean a mass exodus like now, like in the season, or are you talking about after the year?
After the year.
Okay. Thanks for the
Josh,
call.
by the way, it sounds like maybe your mic has become disconnected and you're actually talking through your computer mic instead of the mic you have in front of you. So I'll let you straighten that out. As far as, I mean, yeah, anytime you have a coaching change, you're going to have, there's inevitable, there's bound to be, some departures. Now, one thing that has changed is, and I'm not 100% sure if it's gone into effect yet, but now we have transfer windows that take effect after the championship season is done, or basically after the conference championship season, and it lasts for a certain amount of days, and then another part that will take place in the spring. So as far as players like leaving right now, I'm not sure if they have that ability to do that, because they've now adjusted the transfer policies to create these windows. I would guess at this point. And it's kind of interesting. Josh, you and I famously, we don't typically follow the athletes on Twitter.
Yeah, I don't do that. Yeah.
And so but I have not seen, outside of AJ Allen, who tweeted something earlier today, which was rather benign about just needing to get back to work. I have not seen a lot of social media reaction from the players. And I don't know if that's a conscious effort on their part, or if maybe, that was one of the things, because I'm assuming that the team has met as a group at some point, probably with Mickey Joseph, that maybe that was one of the things that Mickey said was, hey, guys, please stay off social media. I don't know, but I at the moment, and I've been scanning Twitter whenever I get a chance to, I've not seen a lot of reaction on social media from the players. It's definitely a different vibe than the one we had after Bo Pelini was fired.
Oh, yeah.
When you had a lot of people, a lot of players, very upset. And part of that, too, may be in the timing. There's still 3/4 of a season left to go, whereas, in 2014, they had a month removed from a bowl game to go. And so it was probably, from a practical standpoint, easier to react then than it is right now.
Yeah. By the way, Sam McEwen, and I'll get back to answering the question. Sam McEwen just tweeted out, Trev Alberts will confirm, but Nebraska is honoring the full remainder of Frost's contract, almost $16 million. So they are essentially, what that means is they're not firing him for cause. They're firing him because he wasn't winning enough games. Yeah, like you'll see transfers. It's so funny, man. Like it's such a different era. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, fired coach, and that's like your biggest concern is all the players that are going to leave. Now, look, no matter who the coach is and how good or bad he is, I expect players to leave anyway. So, there are rules in place. There are rules in place that allow for a huge roster turnover very, very quickly. We saw that from USC in the offseason. Those rules will still be in place for Nebraska. So you just hope that the next head coach and his assistants have lots of good ties around the country, and that they are able to bring in, contributors and difference makers. And gosh, dude, there's 75% of the season left.
Yeah.
But that's what the conversation is. In the defense, that's where a lot of this is going to come down. They need difference makers on that side of the ball. And I would say, like, for now, let's see what happens when this offense gets into Big Ten play. But if they could hold serve a little bit and then get some difference makers on defense, like that's kind of, I think, what I will be looking at. But again, that's so far away, man. It's September 11th. There's still so much football to be played.
Yeah, there is.
It's a lost season. This is a lost season of all lost seasons.
And unfortunately, in times like this, a lot of your past can kind of come back to bite you. I'll be curious to see if Trev Alberts addresses this, because this was what Trev Alberts said last October, as a matter of fact. It's a tweet from Sam McEwen quoting Trev Alberts. Albert said, making bold, broad statements in the middle of the football season, to me, is counterproductive. And then said he's extraordinarily proud of Frost and called the schools that fire coaches 2 games in kind of a crazy la-la land. And I do remember Trev saying that. Literally, he's firing a coach 3 games into a season. And that's,
wow.
Those are the types of things. And yes, in the moment, you have to put on the public face of being as supportive as possible. But unfortunately, it does lead to times where you kind of pin yourself into a corner, and now you're going to have to explain some of that when you get the chance, and Trev Alberts is going to get that chance here in 15 minutes. I hope that, among other things, are some of the things that will be asked by the media today. And quite frankly, and I know obviously everyone likes to know what's next. You're not going to get a lot of answers today about who the next head coach is. So I really hope that today is more about why they made the decision.
That's all I care about.
And what they want to do with the rest of this year. And I hope it's very little about the future, because there is plenty of time to answer the questions about 2023 and beyond. While that is ultimately, at the end of the day, the most important question, it's a question that on today, the 11th of September, 2022, that does not need to be answered. So I really hope, I'm kind of challenging my media brothers who are out there, I'm sure, and sisters who are out there. Let's not worry about who the next coach is or what you're looking for in the next head coach. We got a lot of time to answer that.
Yeah,
I want to know about the justification and the decisions being made today, and why it was important to do it today, and what you plan to do for the rest of this football season.
Yeah, honestly, like a positive of it happening now with so much distance before the end of the season is it's like two separate events. Normally a head coach is fired, and immediately it does become what's next, because at Nebraska, at least every coaching change in our lifetimes, every men's or every football coach's firing in our lifetime has come at the end of the year. It's come after Thanksgiving. And so outside of one very memorable coaching search, they happen very quickly. And the next coach was hired within a week and a day. This is different because there are basically the whole season is still remaining. And so I'm with you. I want today to be about the why of why now. That's what today is. And then let's worry about who's next. I mean, we have many months to do that. And we're going to get the answer eventually. And look, we'll do the candidates and who we want to hire. We can do all of that stuff. But in my opinion, today is about the why of now.
Exactly. Because whoever is next, you're not going to be able to get them until probably December at the earliest.
Yeah, save the Urban Meyer.
And we're going to get these questions.
He's in town this weekend. John, he's in town this weekend. How annoying is that going to be?
Oh, very annoying. But the answer is not Urban Meyer. We can unpack that at another place and time. But the answer is not Urban Meyer. Yeah. Period. Now, so the guy that you're likely to get, even from that doubles, triples, homers list, isn't going to be available to you until December. And maybe even after that, like if it's and this is a name that's going to be very high on my list, Bill O'Brien, who's the offensive coordinator now at Alabama.
And if Alabama
goes as far as they typically go, he's probably not leaving until January.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a while. So today, I agree. Today is about why the decision needed to be made today, why it fell apart, and what you plan to do in the moment. Because those are questions that are important to answer, too, for the future. Because let's, again, from the 35,000-foot view of the situation, this is going to look very odd that Trev Alberts, made these bold statements last November about, we're keeping him because of loyalty and because of the money and this, that, and the other thing. And we really want to work together. And, he also made the comments, and we played them a little bit earlier on about how he's proud of Frost for making some of the tough changes that he had to make. You only gave those choices 3 games. And so there is going to have to be an explanation to that makes logical sense, because the world is watching. Yeah. The world of college football is watching. Your next employer or employee, the next guy that you hope to pin your hopes and dreams on for making this program what it once was, will be watching. And those are important, because the last thing you want to do is stumble as a Steve Peterson did back in 2003, 2004. And that whole coaching search turned into a disaster. And that never got off to a good start. You want to try to handle this as best you can in a moment where you're having to fire a guy 3 games into a season. So there's a lot to unpack and answer just from that alone.
Jim tweets in JTech Construction Zone Twitter feed, over under on if the word metrics will get mentioned during the presser. Yeah, look, that will be a question. Like, was he already unable to meet whatever the metrics were? He's not. Look, Trev's going to sidestep that one. Is my prediction on that? But yeah, I'm sure that somebody will ask about it. I'm sure that will come up. Doc Loves Music tweets in. He says, "Stop saying it's a lost season. What does that even mean? Nebraskans don't think that way. That's why the vast majority of the stadium is still filled when having a, I think meant to say losing season, said had a loose season. Look, it's a lost season because they don't have a head coach right now.
Right.
They have an interim head coach. They will be in the midst of a coaching search very, very shortly. In theory, technically, all of their goals are still in front of them. Yes. Though I'd say probably not a national championship, but every other goal is in front of Nebraska at this point in time, right? Like in theory, it all
yes,
is.
mathematically, yes, it is. But realistically, in watching this team, no one can sit back and say that.
Yeah.
And while the commenter that you just read, there might be a lot of folks who think that way. That's just happy fan talk.
Yeah, exactly.
That's just happy fan talk. That's like me, back in May, when the Cubs were only a couple of games out of first place, saying, yep, we still got a chance in this thing. I mean, I can see the product on the field, and I can see where this is trending, and I can see where there are massive deficiencies. That's just happy fan talk. In reality, a team that plays this poorly on defense is not going to be accomplishing many goals unless your goal is to win 3 or 4 games.
Yeah.
Because right now, if this defense does not get any better, there may not be another win on the schedule.
Yeah.
And that's not hyperbole. That's fact. Nebraska literally just lost its first game ever in the history of Memorial Stadium when scoring 35 points. That stadium's almost 100 years old. That is an incredible statistic. That just it's one of many things that exemplify how poor this defense is. What are you reacting to right now?
Well, I got the game on, but Don said in the Bengals didn't score those jerks. Don says, interim or not, Mickey Joseph is still the head coach. Deal with it, guys. There's nothing to deal with. Don, we're not being critical of Mickey.
What are we not dealing with?
I'm just saying, like this, sometimes it's just so like the most obvious stuff gets by people. Like, this is a program that just fired their coach on September 11th. Like, the goals will not be reached this year. This is a bad football team, and they're essentially moving on from everything. I don't think Mickey is going to be the head coach for next year. Thus, again, this is a lost season for Nebraska. They brought a guy back, and then they fired him only to pay the buyout that they could have paid last year. It's so obvious, right? Like the Luke Fickell year in 2011 for Ohio State. Was that not a lost season for Ohio State? Of course it was a loss. Now, not being a great thing. That doesn't have to be inherently a negative thing. If you get an incredible hire in this cycle that you couldn't have gotten last cycle, that's awesome. And so that's what you hope for Nebraska. Ohio State was able to do it. I don't mean to bring him up, but I mean, that's what they did. They got Urban Meyer. They wouldn't have been able to get him if they would have, hired a full-time coach ahead of the 2011 season, but they ended up firing, their head coach. He got canned super duper late in the process. It was what, Memorial Day weekend when Tressel was, resigned or whatever it was. So that's why it's a lost season. This is not a criticism of Mickey Joseph. I think Mickey Joseph is going to put on a really good face. I think he's going to do a great job in a lot of the areas that that he'll be asked to I don't know, oversee. I think he can do a good job. Obviously, the defense is going to be a problem. And that's the one thing that really sucks about this whole thing is a lot of times you see a firing, especially, in the NFL, and it's like, sweet, now they can try to turn it around. I sadly don't see that really coming this year.
We're less than 10 minutes away from when Trev Alberts is scheduled to speak, so let's take our break right now so that we make sure we start on time. And we will continue with more of our breaking news coverage. Scott Frost fired after 4+ seasons. Trev Alberts to speak in moments right here on 1620 The Zone, 1620thezone.com, and Zone TV.
FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. Join today and get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed. All you have to do is place your first $5 bet using promo code HAPPER to get in on the action. It's easy to turn game day into payday all season long. Jump into any one of these week 1 matchups that we have, or you could parlay a couple of them together. You can jump and pick yourself up a nice little same game parlay if you're
The Bears are going to win this game.
Good Lord.
Let's take a look at the
Steelers just threw the ball on second down for no reason, and it was incomplete. It got batted down at the line.
I've got red zone on,
catches the
and then I
props are all fantastic at the FanDuel Sportsbook. Don't fumble your chance to get $150.
It is a downpour. I mean, it is.
Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. 21 plus and present in Iowa. First online real money wager only. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as now withdrawable free bets that expire 14 days after receipt.
Let's see. I'm going to try.
1180
Yeah,
is your home for Omaha Storm Chasers baseball. The Storm Chasers are in action at Werner Park and beyond.
Link up to the press conference, so I'll try to keep an eye on that when he starts talking. But I may have to wait. Josh, producer Josh, may just have to break in and say, guys, Scott Frost is talking. Or not Scott Frost. Trev Alberts is talking, and I'll just shut up. And I see that you've got the graphic uploaded for when Alberts is speaking, so we got that slate ready to go.
Oh, hey, I just found the link for it. I'll slide into your DM.
I got the Twitter link. I've already got it up. And Josh has it.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah, Josh should have the Twitter link because I sent it to him earlier. They've had the thing up the whole time, so. Washington was going for 2. Did they make it?
And by the way, everyone who's reaching out, we know that you can hear us right now. We're not on. This isn't on the radio.
Now the radio's in commercial.
For 18 years.
Radio's in commercial. Those of you who are watching in the video get to listen to our conversations behind the scenes.
And better with Oscar's newly upgraded audio-video system.
I'm not doing the show pantsless.
In front of a 22-foot LED video wall, showing up to 8 games at once, and of course, 40 TVs
you wouldn't be able to see anything.
projectors. Oscar's.
Oh, we know. We need a magnifying glass.
West Center Road, and for takeout at 162nd and Maple.
You
Bengals
can join
have the
us
ball
every
back.
week for the Sharp and Betting podcast.
Less
It's
than a minute
The
left.
Steelers threw it, idiots.
got a podcast driven by our good friends at Woodhouse Auto Family.
Yeah, the cool thing about it is we'll get more in depth on a lot of your favorite topics.
Excellent graphics, by the way, Josh. Thank you.
Yeah, Josh,
for coming in today, too.
Information that
almost
you've never heard before. Wherever you get your podcasts, just look for Sharp and Betting. We got a podcast.
Wow,
driven
Frisco's
by
got
Woodhouse
11
Auto Family
penalties.
each Friday.
What a
You can
horribly
find it on the
disciplined
Sharp and Betting
team.
show page on
This just salvaged my week. Shut up, dear. I know they did.
You click, you take, they'll be watching you.
Be happy for
Are you tired of being tracked online? There's a simple solution. DuckDuckGo. It's an all-in-one privacy app with a built-in private search engine, web browser, one-click data clearing,
Mom was
email
supposed to have
protection,
surgery
and
here
more,
pretty soon,
all for
so
free.
hopefully that
Download
went
the
well.
app today.
She's
and get the most
basically getting
comprehensive
Adrian
privacy
Martinez.
protection with a push
She's getting the
of a button.
same jaw surgery.
DuckDuckGo. Privacy
Who
simplified.
is?
My mom.
Oh, God.
Yeah, she's basically getting a similar surgery to Adrian because she broke her jaw.
Have a high risk factor, such as heart disease.
Oh my gosh!
being overweight, smoking,
Bro, oh, you just overthrew with that.
These factors can increase your risk of
Oh,
COVID-19
man,
turning
they almost
severe.
won.
So if you're at high risk and test
Oh, is it a Hail Mary?
No, they have like 40 seconds left.
Provider,
Maybe he would. Thomas, he was going out of bounds, so maybe he wouldn't have scored. But
at treatcovid19.
it's 2nd and 10. There's 42 seconds left.
The freaking Texans are tied with Indianapolis.
Yikes.
Welcome back. Breaking news coverage on this Sunday afternoon. John Bishop, Josh Peterson, and producer Josh Ogston. I always mess up your last name. Ogston. Yeah.
Odson.
He does a great.
Odson.
Odson.
Yeah.
Odson.
He's only been your coworker for like 2 years.
I know, but I've never actually said his last name before. I just call him producer Josh. I call him Braves fan Josh. Anyway, yeah. John, Josh, and Josh today on this breaking news coverage. Trev Alberts scheduled to speak in mere minutes, seconds perhaps, and we will go to that live right here on 1620 The Zone, 1620thezone.com, and Zone TV. Trev Alberts announcing earlier today in a press release that was put out at 12:30 that Scott Frost has been fired after 4+ seasons and a 1-2 start to this season. for Nebraska football. Reactions continuing to trickle in. Of course, the media scrum right now is rather huge, as I'm seeing some pictures from behind the scenes. A lot of folks being able to gather up their stuff and get ready to go. Connor Happer just tweeted us and said Trev Alberts is walking in right now.
Okay.
So we will be headed to the podium in mere seconds. Good on Trev. He's a punctual man. He's an on-time man. And once he gets started, we will go to that press conference live from Lincoln. So stand by for Trev Alberts, and I assume he'll be taking questions today from the media. We don't believe that anyone else is scheduled to speak today at this press conference. We believe it is just going to be Trev Alberts.
And by the way, we're also on 101.9 The Keg right now as well. All of this coverage, Husker coverage on the Zone, powered by Tickets for Less.
Thank you, Tickets for Less. So again, mere moments away from the start of the news conference with Trev Alberts, the Nebraska athletic director, to go through the details of his decision-making process as to why he is letting Scott Frost go after 4+ seasons. The record 16-31. It is the worst winning percentage by a Nebraska coach to have this much time at the helm since Bill Jennings. And
we got him, Josh. All right, let's listen to Trev.
Let's go to Trev Alberts in Lincoln.
Tell you that I really wanted this thing to work. Our donors wanted it to work. Everybody wanted it to work. And so, in a way, it's unfortunate and sad that we're here today. So I want to thank Scott. I also want to thank Mickey Joseph for taking on this role. I felt like there's 9 games left in the season. And I think we owed it to the players. We owe it to our fans to give these players an opportunity these last 9 games. We've got good players on this football team. And so having a different voice and having some new energy and enthusiasm, I'm hoping can make a difference for this team. And then third and finally, I think at the end of the day, there has to be accountability. When you run a professional organization that has high standards, accountability has to matter. And, Scott and I talked about this very clearly. 16-31 obviously was not at a level that was acceptable to us. So I met with Scott this morning at 11 o'clock. I'll just kind of walk you through the process of the day. I met with Scott at 11 o'clock and informed him. I want you to know that Scott was extremely collegial and he understood. I wasn't surprised because I know how much Scott loves this place. And I think that's really important. We then both had an opportunity to go down and meet with the team. We sent an email to our team. Most of the team was here, so we got to meet with our team. And Scott was with me, and I thanked the team, and I thanked Scott in front of the team for all of his hard work. I think the team really cares about Scott, and I know Scott really cares about the team. I then gave Scott an opportunity to spend time himself with the team. And so we all left, and Scott spent time with the team, and those conversations will remain with the team and Scott. And then finally, I invited Mickey Joseph, and Mickey came in about 11:45 and spoke to the team and walked them through some of the changes that he envisioned. I communicated to Mickey that Mickey's the head coach. I won't meddle in Mickey's decision-making process. I encouraged Mickey to be the head coach and make decisions as the head coach. And so he'll ultimately have an opportunity probably with all of you to explain. I think there will be some changes. Explain some of the changes with the team. There'll be some structural changes and things that I think Mickey believes in, which will be good going forward. He can explain all that to you. Just want to tell you a little bit about the process going forward, and we'll open it up to questions. Obviously, we're going to do a national search. We're going to engage some third-party help, mostly for logistics and other things. Want you to know as well, and I would encourage our fans and everyone to recognize there will be a lot of rumors out there. There's going to be a lot of innuendo. I want you to know that these sort of decisions and processes are not made in a silo. A lot of great mentors and friends that we'll be working with. And ultimately, in a prior life, I have relationships with a lot of coaches in this business, and I intend to reach out to a lot of people. And so if you hear that Trev Alberts reached out to XYZ coach, it doesn't mean that I've offered the job to XYZ coach. I think there's some fabulous coaches out there that have a perspective about our job that I could benefit from. And so I'm going to reach out to a lot of people. And so if you hear that Trev Alberts reached out to XYZ coach, it might very well be true. It doesn't mean that I'm trying to hire that coach. I'd like to get that perspective. I'd like to get a perspective of a coach who isn't here right now about our job and what the uniqueness is and the needs and those sorts of things. So just want to be clear about that process. Obviously, there's been some changes in college football with the early signing date and transfer portal. There are considerations as we go forward as well. But most importantly, I'm going to do everything I possibly can, like I think we did for Scott, to support Mickey Joseph and the staff as best we possibly can. It's a group of young men that they're hurting. They care deeply about this place. And so we're going to do everything we can to support them and help them. They've got 9 games left. We've got a great opportunity this weekend against Oklahoma. And so we're going to support them as best we can going forward. All right. I guess we'll open it up from comments and questions here.
Why now as opposed to October or the end of the season?
It's a good question. It's a fair question, Annie. It's, at this point, I just felt like, as I mentioned earlier, we owed it to the players, to give them a different voice, perhaps slightly different vision, give them some confidence, an opportunity. We've got 9 games. We've got seniors on this team that have invested a lot for a long time. And I know how disruptive these changes are. You're not just affecting the player's life, you're affecting all the coaches and their family. And I understand that. But we needed to do something. We needed to inject something into this team to give them the confidence and hopefully help them compete. Nothing would please me more than to see a pretty significant change and help this team get over the hump and win some games.
The buyout was supposed to drop in half on October 1st. How did you handle that? Was there a negotiated settlement? Or did Scott get the $15 million?
There's no negotiated settlement. The University of Nebraska has a long history of living up to what we've agreed to. And so the contract is what the contract is. And of course, the university will comply as we always do.
Did you have to summon any outside help from boosters?
I won't get into any discussions about outside boosters or any of that sort of thing. But
Trev, when did you actually make the decision? Last night?
Yeah, I think last night. Not a lot of slept. Didn't sleep a lot, Andy, and a lot of us didn't. But some real concern throughout the first couple games, and wanted this thing to work. Wanted to give a little extra time, and I think last night, and then through the night, and then into this morning, I really felt like we needed to make a change.
If they won, would that have changed? Like if they get a stop?
I don't know, Sam. I mean, I don't want to get into the what ifs if they stopped here on 3rd down or got this. I mean, I don't think that's really healthy. We are where we are. We're 16-31, and I want to give this group of players an opportunity to have a different voice to try to win some games this year.
Would you have a short list of coaches you're considering at this point? Or you just start with a very broad?
Well, Steve, I want to first say, first of all, we have not engaged in any third-party folks. I have not talked to any agents of any football coaches. We were all in to help Scott be successful. Everybody wanted Scott to be successful, and I believe Scott wanted Scott to be successful as well. So listen, yeah, anybody in my position has a group of folks that they admire. At the end of the day, for us, we need to, get some clear definitions about what those coaching qualities look like. What is our unique culture need in terms of coaching, and ultimately, what is our culture going to be as a team? So, yeah, there's a group of people that I'm well aware of and interested in, would like to talk to, and we'll go through that as we move forward. But right now, in the immediacy, Steve, we've got an opportunity to support the team as they move forward.
What chance does Mickey Joseph have to earn the job on?
Well, I met with Mickey and I told him, we were going to do a national search. And so we'll continue to do a national search, and we'll see how the season unfolds. But I think we have an opportunity, to hire an outstanding coach that can lead our program. And I'd love to see Mickey, grow into that, and we'll just see where it goes. But again, we'll do a national search. And if at that point, Mickey is an obvious candidate. He'll be part of that conversation as well.
Trev, where do I guess, what kind of expectations do you have for the program now? I mean, what do you think the ceiling is, and where would you like the team to go from here?
I won't get into specific, ceilings or where to go. Listen, we've said all along, I'd just love to see this team continue to grow, compete, make progress, have a team that represents the values of Nebraskans, be tough, win the line of scrimmage, do the fundamental things that teams need to do to win games. And I think we can get there. We'll stop talking about championships or stop talking about things we used to do. We'll just get really process oriented, detail oriented. And ultimately, when you start doing those fundamental championship habits type things, as I think about them, those types of wins and things follow. But we need to stop focusing on that. We need to start focusing on those small fundamental things that ultimately lead to those types of things. And so those are the things we'll do.
What are 3 or 4 qualities that you really want in a good head coach? You've hired many head coaches at other places. Talking intangibles, not necessarily resume.
Sam, I've always believed that, great coaches are people of character. I think they're people managers. They're culture builders. I think they're grinders. A lot of the great ones don't have a whole lot of hobbies. It's all they know, and, so those types of things. And I think young people, as we've moved forward, have changed a little bit. So I think being able to identify and relate to the modern student athlete and all that they're going through and all of the new things like NIL and all those types of things are very important. But the basic fundamentals of authentic leadership, is this somebody that the players are willing to follow? It's just basic types of leadership things that are really, really important to me. And I like people who hate to lose. I like people who hate to lose more than they enjoy winning. And I got to be really careful when I say those things, because I certainly don't mean to infer and imply that our previous coach didn't have those things. And I want to be very clear about that. That's not fair to Scott. What I'm saying is that's what I have found. No matter if it's a football coach, basketball coach, or a volleyball coach, there's some very core and key fundamental characteristics that help to define each of them. And those are the types of things that I believe in as well.
Trev, when you look at the coaching market and just the salaries and how much they've gone up, how competitive can Nebraska be in this current market of coaching salaries?
Yeah, I'm well aware of where the market has shifted in terms of compensation, and at a place like Nebraska, we're blessed to be in a position to meet market demand, and certainly resources won't be an impediment towards hiring the type of coach that we want to lead the Husker program.
Once around mixed, are you that this didn't?
Andy, I hadn't put a lot of thought into that, Andy, but I thought it would work. And listen, we all have short memories, but Scott Frost was among the absolute leaders in that cycle of coaching. And Scott's a good football coach. Scott's going to go on and be a successful coach. I told him that this morning, and he agreed. Scott's a good football coach, and the right situation for him will emerge, and I think he'll be very successful. I was determined to work with him. And try to balance, Andy, that very delicate balance of not meddling, because it's the last thing I think administration should do, is start dictating to coaches how they operate their deal, but be supportive. And but it is what it is. It didn't work, and that's why we're here today.
What are some of the specific qualities he has that made him right for this role?
Well, Mickey's an energetic guy. Some of you have interacted with him already. He's pretty black and white. And, I was in there when he talked to the team, and he, I think, sees this as a real opportunity for him as well, professionally. And all of you will get a chance to talk to Mickey. I think he has an infectious personality. I think that's important. He's been some places. So I think that benefits him. I think he has some different feelings about structure and approach and how he'll handle practice and some different things. So there'll be some immediate, fairly significant changes into his approach. And he had a very poignant conversation with the team today that I thought they took very well. And at the same time, I think, like Scott, Mickey will love them and seek to serve them.
This being a unique program, what sort of qualities do you look for in a person to run this kind of program? From that specific slant of it, but just the intense interest and all that.
Well, I don't know if there's anything specific to, how magnified the role is. I certainly think it has to be somebody that has a servant leadership mentality, that's here to serve young people, that perhaps sees a picture bigger than themselves, if you will. But I don't think anything specific. I mean, every single job in college football has challenges. This job has advantages to other jobs, and it has some disadvantages. It's the same thing with every job in college football. We have 1.8 million people in this state. That's not going to change. But we got some built-in advantages here. So we need to play to our strengths and build on those, right? And so the right kind of coach, I think, sees this as an opportunity to rebuild and build something special here.
Why don't you think it worked? I mean, you've been here now for however many games, 15 games. Why do you think Nebraska was 4-11 in those games?
Sam, I don't know. And, I'm not trying to be flippant with you. If I knew, we would have made some changes. I don't know the answer to that question.
Did you see something in cross coaching style, whether in practice or in games, that disappointed you or frustrated you?
I could spend a lot of time. I don't want to spend a lot of time going backwards and looking at and evaluating Scott, only because I think at this point it's a little unfair to Scott. We've moved on. Certainly there's things that you observe and you'd see and you'd say, well, maybe I'd do something different. We would have conversations. But at the end of the day, Scott Frost was a head coach. And I promise you, Scott made decisions that he thought were in the best interest of the University of Nebraska. They were genuine. He believed that in his heart. Okay. And so that's really important. I don't want to spend a lot of time evaluating Scott's performance over the last 5 years. I think, at the end of the day, Scott's no longer the head coach here, and we'll move on and look forward to, I think you'll see some of those changes and you'll get to talk to Coach Joseph about that. But mostly I just want to salute Scott, and, he'll always be a Husker, and he's from the great state of Nebraska and always be welcome here. And we want to support him in that role.
Other questions for Trev?
What's the when you timeline? You ideally want to have a coach in place, whether it's Mickey or it's someone else, right after the season, or how long is that you doing that taking?
Well, I do think there's some benefits in terms of making the decision when we made it. I think this gives us an opportunity to really, do the necessary work. We need to dive into a real process and a detail-oriented process that talks to a lot of people. And that's why I mentioned earlier, you're going to hear about a lot of names. That's good. That means we're going to talk to a lot of people because we're going to clearly define what our values are. And we're not going to hire coaches who don't believe in what we believe in, Sam. And so we need to take as long as it takes to find the right leader. So is there an ideal timeline? Sure. I mean, you could naturally look at some of these timelines, early signing date, and say it'd be really nice to be able to get the person in place by then because it would allow us to do that. But we won't make decisions or rush things just to get a coach hired. We're also not going to try to win the press conference. All right. At the end of the day, we need to hire the right leader and the right fit. And that's a really important thing here as well.
We talk to the recruits at all, or we have a chance to visit with the recruits, or we let the coaches just kind of handle that from here on out?
I'll do whatever Mickey asked me to do. I really enjoy talking to the recruits, prospective recruits. You've probably seen me out on the field, and I really enjoy talking to those young men. I will do anything I possibly can to be supportive of the football coaching staff, but I will not get in the way. And so ultimately what I would do with Scott is every time we talked, I'd ask, how can I help? Am I doing anything that's counterproductive? I'll do the same thing with Mickey. What can I do to help? I want him to be successful because ultimately that means our young men are being successful. So I'll do whatever Mickey and the staff ask me to do.
Trev, for you personally, do you feel like the hiring of this next coach will define your tenure as Nebraska's athletic director?
Well, I think you guys will probably define my tenure. That's how it works. But No, I don't think about those kinds of things. I'm no different than Scott. I love the University of Nebraska, and like I said earlier, I had really hoped that the day I got introduced here as the athletic director, that I'd never have to be doing this. I really thought that I could work with Scott, and that's what everybody wanted. So we'll do the right things. We'll do the best that we can. Every decision we make here, whether it's right or wrong, we'll learn later, but they are always done with what we think is in the best long-term interest of the University of Nebraska and our athletic department. And this place will always be bigger than any one person. And that is the way it has to be. And so we'll do the very best that we can, and we'll dive into the details. We'll surround ourselves with good people, and we'll identify the next leader of Husker football.
Back to Mickey for a second. Why him as opposed to anyone else on the staff?
Well, I think that, I went through a lot of folks too. I mean, you can naturally make certain arguments, certain places, and, Mickey's not calling the plays, Coach Whipple is. And so there's a lot of responsibilities for the head coach that lie outside of football. You can only imagine with, Fox coming this weekend, and, we need to have Coach Whipple focused on game planning and play calling all week. And obviously defensively, we've got some fairly significant adjustments to make. And so Chins has got to be really focused there. And so, I think that Mickey, his personality, his energy and enthusiasm, I think, and we need a different voice, right? We need to provide hope for these young men. And you've got a lot of young men in that locker room that at the end of the day, football's a tough sport. You have to force yourself to do things you don't want to do physically. And so having somebody that can pull that out of you and motivate you to do that. And in my observations of Coach Joseph, I think he has some of those attributes, and I'd like to see him function in that role.
Anything else?
Was there anyone else relieved of their duties today, or was it just Coach Frost?
Just Coach Frost. Again, Mickey Joseph is the head coach, and if he chooses to make some of those additional changes, we will support those changes as well. But I am not aware of any of those that he anticipates at this time.
Thank you.
And that is the conclusion of our press conference with Trev Alberts. He spoke for about 20 minutes as he recaps the decision of the day, and that is to release Scott Frost from his duties. Scott Frost no longer the head football coach at Nebraska. Let's reset the situation now. John Bishop, Josh Peterson, producer Josh Odson from our studios in Omaha. And we appreciate you being out there today. We have been on the air really since the story broke just shortly after 12:30 this afternoon. Had some questions. Yes, you'll be able to recap if you've missed any of our programming so far. You'll be able to find it on the Big Red Overreaction page on the radio replay section of 1620thezone.com. Also, if you're watching on Zone TV, our YouTube channel, once this actually, you can rewind.
You can rewind it to the beginning. Yeah.
Real time. You can go back in time right now if you want to, or once the program ends, it'll be archived there as well. So you'll be able to catch everything that you may have missed so far. I believe Connor Happer is going to join us when he gets an opportunity here momentarily. So Connor will join us. He was in the room today in Lincoln. But to just kind of recap or react, I guess, to what Trev Alberts said, as we expected, there's the sense of needing to promote at least some hope for the rest of this season. He did intimate that there would be some changes structurally that he said Mickey Joseph would announce. But then at the end of the press conference, he mentioned Chins by name.
Yeah.
So some people who may have heard that and said, well, is Mickey Joseph going to make a move on, defensive coordinator Eric Chenander? It would appear as if that's not the case. Now, what the changes are structurally, it could be in relation to game day responsibilities. Technically, Nebraska does need a full-time assistant because they've lost Scott Frost, and with Mickey moving into that, you actually have room to maybe elevate somebody who is an analyst to a quote unquote temporary or interim full-time position. So there may be some of those things that they have to talk about.
John, I bet the media is going to, I bet the assistants are going to speak again. That is like a quick thing that I think is going to be like, hey, look, it's different. That's just a theory of mine.
Yeah, that was one thing that that ended before the season started, was they weren't allowing the assistants to speak anymore, with the exception of Whipple and Chenander. So that may change. So there'll be some structural things, and we presume, I've not seen anything from the university. I'm presuming that we hear from Mickey Joseph tomorrow at the usual Monday press conference. Now, that has not been confirmed. I'm going off assumption because there has not been an additional addendum to the initial press release. So we may not find out some of that stuff till tomorrow.
Yeah.
We will certainly see. One of the other things that he mentioned too, Josh, real quick, was
a couple
how it's going to be a national search, and that Trev's going to reach out to a lot of people, but don't assume that people I'm reaching out to are necessarily my targets. And I think that's a very shrewd way.
Yes, it is.
Of acknowledging that, yes, somebody that some Husker fans are thinking would be a perfect new head coach will be in town next week on the Fox broadcast. I'm talking about Urban Meyer. That may be Trev's way of saying, hey, you might see me interact with Urban Meyer. You may hear that I had words with Urban Meyer, but do not assume that everybody I talk to is necessarily a candidate. So I think that was a really interesting way to put maybe that rumor to bed. Now, listen, people are going to run with it anyway. The Urban Meyer stuff has already caught fire. It's been smoldering for weeks now. Now it's going to be a full out on, especially this week. It's going to be a full out fire. You and I are both in agreement. Trev's not going to make that move.
No,
but Trev may actually talk to Urban Meyer, because for what all of his faults or whatever his connections may be, he still has connections, and he would be an interesting person to talk to if you were looking for another head coach. If for anything else, it's just, hey, are you here? Who do you like out there, or what kinds of things are you hearing?
Yeah, exactly. Also, just his acknowledgement too of rumors. Like, that's basically how he opened his press conference, saying like, you're going to hear, and he mentions that he just saying that word. I don't know, man. He seemed ready. A couple of things that stood out to me throughout this one. I think one probably resonated with you as well, given that some of the conversations you had last night on Big Red Overreaction. A quote: "We are where we are. We're 16-31." I thought that was a shrewd way to say it's not that they're 1-2. It's not that they just lost to North Dakota, but they are a 16-1 organization. The other thing was, and I didn't get the exact quote, I wish I had it, but Trev mentioned near the end wanting grinders and those that don't have hobbies. And I found that one
about, great coaches are the ones that typically don't have a lot of hobbies.
That one is pretty interesting. So those stood out to me quite a bit. I mean, look, given that it was a media personality, he really knows how to do these types of things. I thought he was out ahead of stuff throughout it. And I guess one more thing that stood out to me, John, and that was when he was asked, I believe it was by Andy Kindy, about did he make the decision last night? And then Sam followed up and like, hey, what would have happened if they would have won? I mean, in that moment, it was pretty obvious that the decision had been made before last night, and that last night was in a way kind of permission to decide to do this now. By the way, we have. Do we want to go to Connor? Connor is available.
Yeah, let's
with us.
do. And I guess we need to also kind of make a decision too on how long we're going to go with this. We've been on since 12:30, so I'm thinking maybe we just take it to the top of the hour and call it a day. And of course, we'll have plenty of more reaction tomorrow with Damon and Gary at 6, Connor at 10, and Josh and I will be back at 2:00. By the way, we have missed some amazing NFL finishes. Some games are still going on, and apparently college kickers are now NFL kickers because they're missing field goals and PATs.
Laces out, Cincinnati. Laces out.
Laces out indeed. Let's go to Lincoln. Up in the press box is Connor Happer, our colleague from the Connor Happer Show. Connor, thanks a lot for coming on. Just kind of, first give us kind of just what the mood in the room was, and then I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts on everything that's happened so far today.
Yeah, I always appreciate it. And hello, guys. You've been on for 3 hours. Congratulations.
Hi, Connor.
Yeah, very, very well done. Yeah, I mean, I'm always impressed with the way Trev sort of like, he commands the room without being like the biggest sort of figure in the room. He's really confident and he's really transparent, and even and that doesn't mean you can like bait him into asking a question that he doesn't want to give the answer to either. If he doesn't want to answer the question, you want to answer the question too. We saw that, a couple of times today. So I'm always sort of impressed with his sort of transparency and right off the bat talking about how you're going to hear a lot of things and there's going to be a lot of people who may get talked to by me or a third party or something like that, and that doesn't mean we're going to hire him. So I thought he set the tone pretty well without looking back too much. I don't know, for our sake, I think I wanted maybe a little bit of more of a retrospective, but maybe we weren't going to get that anyway. So yeah, I mean, it set the tone, and this is going to be probably a lengthy deal here, but and it set the tone for Mickey in the last couple months of the season here too. So I'm really intrigued in what happens and what he says on Monday or Tuesday or whenever it happens, and the changes that he's going to make.
Connor, we talked about it last week on and off the air after the Sipple column went up, where he mentioned if Nebraska loses to Georgia Southern, he could get fired that night. We were all like, wait a second, did we miss something? And we are all theorizing about it. And I think maybe by the time yesterday arrived, I think a lot of us maybe were in that camp. How do you think things turn so quickly? You've had a lot of time to think about the why today of it all over the last few hours. Have you been able to land on anything in particular?
I just think, like the more that I thought about it, Josh, like I guess the thing I kept coming back to was maybe the seat was hotter than we ever thought it was to begin with. I mean, or the margin for error for Scott was thinner than we ever sort of thought it was, or at least we perceived it to be at the beginning of the year. To where I heard you guys a little bit before I came on here, but I think, last night, Trev said Trev said he made the decision last night after the game, but that wasn't it. Obviously, that wasn't the sole determination and what happened. It was a lot leading up to that, and so he's a really calculated guy, and I think maybe you want to act on some things and then maybe take a step back from it. I think he likes to take the emotion out of decisions, and so maybe this was a thought a few weeks ago, and then you step back and just sort of needed that okay, that go ahead, and they got it in a historic loss last night.
Connor Happer joining us from Lincoln. Obviously, there was a lot of things that happened last night that I guess the straw that broke the camel's back. And I guess it's crazy how quickly things can change, isn't it? That, it wasn't that long ago where the idea of firing Scott Frost, you still would have had a mini revolt take place among the fan base. And yeah, I see a few stragglers. I was listening again to the post-game call-in show last night on the Husker Network after we finished up Big Red Overreaction. And yeah, there's still a few folks out there that, believe that Scott was the one and they need to give him more time and all those same excuses. But man, last night, it seemed so final. And it was just like the giant cutting board, just whoom, just that axe coming down for a vast majority of the fans. And it was just a weird night. And it's continuing just a weird, last, dare I say, 20 years of this program where Scott Frost goes from being the chosen one to now being, escorted out the door. I honestly, Connor, 5 years ago at this time, if you would have told me this was how it was going to play out, I would have said no way in hell.
No, absolutely no chance. We've had a lot of checkpoints over the last couple of years and sort of talking to people about it. Like, no way you could convince me it was going to go this way. I just wonder, because you're talking about the mood around here, and I think it probably didn't come as a surprise to Frost when he was fired this morning. So I wonder, and I talked a little bit about this on my show and other things too, but I thought that emotion in that North Dakota win, the press conference afterwards, I felt like that was sort of he felt as if the walls were really closing in and there was no way they were going to be able to dig themselves out of this hole. So at that point, he knows whether it's, a week or a month or whatever, it's probably going to happen and they're not going to be able to figure it out. I wonder when that really, because it goes, John, you're talking about it. Like at the beginning, you couldn't have convinced me that this was going to happen. So when did it first happen in Frost's head where he was like, man, I just don't know if we're going to be able to do this. I don't know if we're going to be able to get the job done. I think, I think you could make a variety of guesses there. I would certainly think that it was before this year. But that's an interesting one that I've been thinking about too.
Connor, I'm going to ask a question that I imagine we're going to get asked a lot in the really days, weeks, months, and perhaps years to come. And that is how did this happen? Why did this happen? John just said something that has certainly stuck with me 5 years ago. I cannot imagine somebody saying, and there's been a lot of revisionist history. I loved hearing 800 callers last night. I never actually wanted Frost. But why did this happen? How did this happen that the program got to this place where, he was barely able to make it 4 years and he got fired, before we even get to mid-September?
Yeah. From a football standpoint, you could approach it from a whole bunch of different ways. You could look at it from the football standpoint. And from there, they were, I think, a little obviously overconfident coming in. This is obviously revisionist history too, Josh, because this is something I think a lot of people were applauding at the time. And when they talked about chemistry on the staff, but he brought his entire staff from UCF, and I don't think that has aged too well. No, obviously, and they were a little overconfident in what they were going to do and how they were going to do it. They learned some lessons early, and then I think had a difficult time, sort of, letting what they were going to be at first go, and fully changing over to what they needed to be to win games in the conference, and those were completely different things. And I think they struggled with that, and it culminated in last year getting really close. There's the word close, in a whole bunch of different times, and I think that team was pretty good. And man, a lot of those games could have gone differently, but it ended last year. And this year was always going to be a gamble, a lottery ticket. And they pulled the plug through 3 games. There's so many different ways you can go with that question, whether it's from football or how Frost is looking at things, or his confidence or the staff and the changes they've made along the way. But it's all that stuff together, right?
Yeah. And now you kind of wonder. Now, granted, it's so unusual because we've never done this before, where all the coaching changes have happened at the end of a season. So all you had was the coaching search and the future to talk about. But the future also has a near term, and that is 75% or 9 games of your regular season still remain. I wonder what the expectation is for the rest of this season. And I know that maybe doesn't sound like that important of a question, but you still have 9 games left. You still have a chance to maybe salvage something. Trev didn't totally shoot down the idea that Mickey Joseph couldn't be a candidate at the end, but he also said, hey, I told Mickey, we're doing a national search. So it's not like Mickey Joseph right now is that this is necessarily being treated as a tryout for a future upgrade in position. But that said, just from our standpoint, just for the entertainment of the fans' standpoint, there's still 9 games left in the season. I wonder what a realistic expectation of success is for these final 9 games, so that 2022, which is already going to be noted for the end of Scott Frost, at least has something else written about it in the history books.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is in a win-loss total. I wonder, when you ask that question, I wonder, okay, they have a new voice and maybe a new attitude, and Mickey's going to do some things and change some things, and that's all good, and they might be able to salvage something from that regard. But the thing that I kept coming back to in the first 3 games, and it still stands today, is their defense sucks. How are they going to get stops on people? So I don't know if it turns in terms of wins and losses, because I mean, one thing that you could applaud, Scott and his staff for always is they never quit. It was never 2017. It was never 2007. So they weren't going to quit on him, and that's honestly applaudable. So like I don't know how, whether it's a defensive change in the way that they play, it's still the defensive coordinator. So I'll be curious. I mean, Trev hinted at this a couple times. So when Mickey talks on Monday, or whenever Mickey talks for the first time as the head coach, like, what are some of the things that he sees? Because he clearly sees some things that could be changed right away and can help this team in particular. I'm curious to see where that goes, because ultimately I just don't know if you have that many more options that you can, that many more buttons you can push to fix their issues on the defensive side of the ball.
Connor, before we let you go, obviously I assume you'll be on the air during Mickey's press conference tomorrow, and that's when John and I are, I think, and I'm guessing you're in the same boat. I think that's when we all are expecting it to happen. What do you want to hear from him? I guess, like, what would, if you could ask him a question, what would you ask him?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he'll get too retrospective on what he's seen and experienced in his first couple months here. But I do think he'll lay out, his plan and his idea. I would imagine that he was at least sort of prepared for this opportunity, and may have been part of the, selling point in him coming here. He's got the associate head coach tag, already had it. So, just the plan and the vision, I suppose, even though it's your backs are up against the wall and like, what are you really going to get out of it? It was really interesting to hear Trev talk about Mickey and his candidacy for the job, and the potential of that happening. And then also, some of the things that he didn't talk about specifically, the things that he thinks he can change right away, but there clearly are things. So, just sort of laying out what this program looks like, and they can fix right off the top right away with only one guy gone. It'll be really intriguing to see the difference in that.
Connor Happer, you'll be able to hear him tomorrow at 10 a.m. with the Connor Happer Show. Connor, we appreciate you joining us from Lincoln, and we will see you tomorrow.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Really, did a great job today. You could, check it out on the podcast. People are asking about the podcast. So great job today. Sorry I couldn't be there a little bit, but
you're good.
Anyway, yeah.
Hey, you drove to Lincoln, so
yeah,
yeah, we did.
You did your bid for God and Country, and you owe producer Josh something, because he's also, he's working overtime.
Yeah, shout out to Josh as well.
Yeah, Josh
Indeed.
Hodson. Yeah. All right, Connor Happer from Lincoln.
Later,
Xbox. Let's take our one last break. We're going to take you up to 4:00, and then we will be returning you to NFL coverage. We'll have coverage of the Raiders-Chargers game. Right now, it's Chargers 3-0 late in the first quarter in Los Angeles. And when we come back, it'll be just calls the rest of the way. So 402-951-1620 on the Les Hills Harley-Davidson hotline, and we will be back with more of our breaking news coverage of Scott Frost being dismissed as Nebraska head coach on 1620 The Zone, 1620thezone.com, and Zone TV.
Hey, I'm Jackie, and a little thing I love about the Chick-fil-A chicken biscuit is the chicken.
And again, people watching on the video, you get to hear us in the background, but this is not going over the radio.
Guys, I can hear you.
I can hear you. This Steelers game,
yeah,
now the Steelers have the ball back. See, the problem with watching it on freaking Red Zone is I'm not sure exactly what's all happened here, but it seems like these teams have had weird ways of losing the ball or not winning the game.
Yeah, somebody reached out. Let's see, was this Mark? Yeah, the FYI, the reason Cincinnati is having so many issues in the kicking game is because their long snapper is out. And by the way, the Texans-Colts game ended in a 20-20 tie, and so we could have two 20-20 ties.
Oh, that's amazing.
Oh,
Devontae Adams inside the 5.
And Josh, just to confirm, these pods are going up on the overreaction feed, correct?
That's what
these
he said.
pods are going up on the over.
Steelers are in scoring zone.
Oh wow, you're
do
ahead of
they have any timeouts left? There's a flag.
Corbin. Guys, your mics are live. Oh, are they?
Yes, we know. Our mics are live.
He was making
We're live.
a joke. I think he was making a joke.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, offside. So now Pittsburgh's got the ball. 25 seconds left.
Oh, wow, you're way ahead of me.
At the Cincy 45. I'm watching on Red Zone. Red Zone off cable.
Yeah, I'm watching on actually Paramount Plus on my laptop for the CBS game.
Yeah.
And then I got I have the Vikings Packers game on the TV.
Ditto. I am definitely going to be taking a walk after this.
Yeah, Banks and I we pulled up YouTube and was listening in to Trev, and he went out and peed a few times. Man, he is ready to go to Grandma and Grandpa, so we're going over there after this.
Good.
I just need some food, man. I had some chips and dip during the Trev compressor.
Well, guess what we're having for dinner tonight? Beef stew. Welcome back. Along with Josh Peterson, producer Josh Odson, I'm John Bishop. We are live on this Sunday afternoon with breaking news coverage. Scott Frost fired after 4+ seasons. Mickey Joseph named interim coach. Joseph will, we presume, speak with the media tomorrow at the regular Monday press session, and we'll get more details as to maybe some of the changes that he is planning to make. As we promised, we'll take you up to the top of the hour and then join NFL coverage at the top of the hour here on 1620 The Zone, and we'll wrap up with calls on the Los Hills Harley-Davidson hotline, 402-951-1620.
Let's begin as we wrap it up with caller Lance. Lance joining us right now on 1620 The Zone. Lance, what's up, man?
Hey, what's going on?
Hey.
All right, here's the deal.
Okay.
So everyone's talking Urban Meyer, Urban Meyer this, Urban Meyer that.
Yep.
Trev Alberts said we also need to think about what the younger kids, how they're going to think about too. Total culture reset. Frost comes in, he's trying to recreate an old culture. That's not going to work. So go down to Jackson, get prime time, get Coach Deion Sanders in here, give him $10 million, give him whatever he wants. It is a better hire than Urban. It's just Urban's old news. And Jacksonville, the whole thing, there's a lot of baggage with Urban. Deion Sanders is a complete culture changer. That's who you got to get. And if you can tell me why Urban Meyer would be better than Deion Sanders, I'd love to hear it.
You know what?
Thanks, Lance.
Deion is better than Urban. Now, I don't know if Deion's going to make my list, but Deion is a better choice than Urban. So I can't argue with you on that.
There's been now, like our YouTube comments have been filled with people saying, did the Steelers just win, by the way?
Steelers win.
Sad. The YouTube comments been filled today with people saying Deion. And I can't tell how much of it is just people joking, and I can't tell about how much of it is people actually believing it. And look, if you believe that, I think Deion Sanders might actually be a good coach. And so for all of the stuff about him and now it's all hype and it's all name, image, likeness stuff.
It's all show. It's Deion. It's prime time.
He might be a good coach. I don't know. I have no idea. We've talked about how green Scott Frost is and how that might have been his undoing. There we go. Sorry about that. That was my fault. We've heard all those things about Frost. Like Deion is also green. He's this is what it's like.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's the thing. You'd be getting a lot of show, certainly, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think at Nebraska you want another on-the-job training situation or someone who doesn't have as much experience. Think about it, Josh. This might be the actual first real, true coaching search Nebraska's had in the modern era, where you can literally go out and find out how much are we worth, how much do these coaches, how good are we in the perception of the world? Plus, the world has changed so much. The Big Ten is now literally one of the top 2 teams. Nebraska is going to be breaking in hundreds of millions or tens of millions of dollars in television revenue that heretofore they hadn't had before. They're in great shape here to truly do a national search, to literally go out and get the best they can get. So why go for experiments? Why go for the flash? Why go for the sketchy? You don't have to take chances. you can go out and actually get a proven winner. Now, when I say proven winner, I'm not saying it's going to be Nick Saban, and I'm not saying it's going to be Ryan Day, and I'm not saying it's going to be Dabo Swinney.
Mike McCarthy.
But I'm talking about guys who are proven winners who just need that chance to bust through. Because, hey, the list of current active national championship coaches are 3.
What?
Right?
No.
Dabo, is it Dabo? Saban and Jimbo.
Mac Brown.
Okay, that's true. But Mac Brown's not really.
Hey, Kirby.
He's not an option. Oh, Kirby. Sorry.
Yeah.
All right, but there's only like 5 guys.
Yeah, there's not very many.
And we know for a fact Saban ain't coming here, and Mac Brown is not the choice. So you're not going to get that level of a coach who's already been there and done that. But you can definitely get the level right below it, or at least shoot for it.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a comment. Want to see, where did it go? Maybe here it is. Sam McEwen. He said Mickey Joseph is going to talk to the reporters on Tuesday. So
Tuesday. All right. So they're pushing it back a day.
That makes sense. Yeah. Because first day on the job. I guess today is technically the first day on the job, but first full day tomorrow, game week. So that makes sense, and maybe we shouldn't be surprised.
402-951-1620. All of our coverage this afternoon has been brought to you by Tickets for Less.
Jeannie is up next. Is this our dear friend Jeannie who calls into unsportsmanlike conduct a lot?
It is.
Oh, Jeannie, what's going on?
Well, reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated.
Good. Happy to hear that.
And you're forgetting Big Ed Ogeron as one of those, too.
Well, remember, he doesn't have a job now.
I'm saying current active coaches, but that's a good point.
Yeah.
But anyway, I just have a brief comment to say about Urban Meyer and all the talk, the swirling him.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I know Trev Alberts is an honorable man and is not going to hire anybody like him, because this guy is a character-free zone. And in my own humble opinion, I think he's a fungus-faced, toad-sucking peckerhead.
Wow.
So I don't like him. You might have figured that part out. So I just think we can do better if we hire somebody in a grocery line at Walmart. I think he's lucky to have a job doing anything, because he's not somebody you want your kids to be taught anything by. Football knowledge, probably exquisite, but the rest of him is face I'd most like to see on a milk carton. So anyway, that's all I have to say about him.
Jeannie, I can't disagree with you. And that's the reason why I think Trev Alberts, again, and Trev was very shrewd about it. He said, you might see me or hear me talking to people, but that doesn't mean they're necessarily candidates. And I think he was saying that specifically about this weekend, and that Urban Meyer will be in Lincoln for Fox. And Trev might be spotted talking to him, or might be reports of him talking to him, but that doesn't mean he's asking him to accept a job, but he might just be trying to pick his brain for some possible ideas.
AJ says, good for you guys getting on today to cover the firing. Hope you are rewarded with a Cowboys win. John, we can definitely agree with AJ on that one, right?
Please. Though I really don't give a damn tonight. I don't like Brady either. So, listen, my week was salvaged because Frisco lost to the Bears. Bear down!
Yeah, what the hell? The Chiefs are up 14-0 right now. My bet of the day on Friday, not feeling, well, it's already lost because the Niners. How did they lose to the Bears? The Bears are a dumpster fire, man.
Bad quarterback plus bad weather equals bad result.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, a couple people before we take another call have mentioned Jeff Munkin. What do you think about Jeff Munkin?
Interesting. I'm like I said, as we were going on the air today, I was literally putting my list together, so I'm still working on that. And sometime during the week on Unsportsmanlike Conduct, we can go through it. My homers, doubles, triples, singles list, and I'm sure you'll have a list of your own. But we got plenty of time to flesh all that out.
That was going to be what I did tonight.
You still going to do it tonight?
No. Now I'm just well, I guess maybe I was going to do it in the afternoon while I watch the games. That ain't happening now.
Yeah.
I'm taking after this. I'm gonna like relax. I need to relax and watch football. I need to decompress.
Yeah, this is now like 7 hours on the air in the last 18 hours. That's enough for me.
Dude, Jack and I just did like an hour of a pod, and then like literally minutes before. It's like cool. All that was for nothing.
Yeah.
Anyway,
who's next?
Rick is up next as we continue winding down our coverage. Rick, what's up?
Gentlemen, thanks for taking my call. Hey, John, last night you got a little owly with that guy about trolling. You might want to get to that place down by your mom's house and get some of them drugs because I'm sure it was a challenging night. Now,
not really. I knew he was trolling. I was having fun.
There's this thing on Wall Street that people drive buses to work that make decisions for people that drive limousines. Do you guys really believe Trev Alberts made that decision last night by himself, or he was coerced by a whole lot of benefactors? Seriously.
Honestly, no, I think he made it before last night, and I think he made it.
I think he was already headed that way. He was just trying to find the best time to pull the trigger when he knew he had all of his political ducks in a row.
He
wanted to make this decision last year. I think he wanted to make the decision last year, but he couldn't because of the politics.
No, I think diplomatically he did things as well as he could. And I do truly believe, hopefully, Mickey Joseph can turn this around. I told Vers and Sharp, or Benning and Sharp, in February, that Mickey Joseph might be the heir to the throne. But this job is not that tough in the sense that if you get a guy in there, Scott did not have the personality. Scotty Frost is a tremendous human being. He's done a lot for the state, but he just didn't get the job done for whatever reason. And the guy who played for Penn State and then later for Detroit, the guy who had the heart transplant, he made the comment years ago, Nebraska is the hardest place to recruit to in the Big Ten. And that's where we're at. So, the sun's shining today. Things aren't that bad, but I think hopefully Mickey Joseph can solidify the job. And the thing about Urban Meyer looked at the job after Callahan and he laughed at people. He laughed at Nebraska, and I don't have any proof of this, but there's inkings. And every time he had the chance to put the boots in Nebraska, he did. So hopefully we can build things from the inside here, get some recruits. And I think Mickey Joseph is a good person for the outside recruiting. And hopefully he can bring in some assistants that can solidify that and develop players. And, just like the kid we got a quarterback now, he's not Heisman Trophy, but he manages the game fairly well. And if the defense can stop some people, they can be 8-4. So, hey, thanks for the call. Appreciate the show.
I don't think 8-4 is possible, but we'll see. Thanks for the call, Rick.
By the way, O'Shawn Mathis, he is speaking to the media, or was at least a few minutes ago. Jimmy Watkins just tweeted out a quote. This is O'Shawn Mathis on what needs to change. Our belief system. There's a losing culture going on. A lot of guys don't know what it looks like to win at this point. So just gaining trust for each other. It's been really interesting hearing how new players that have not been involved in Husker football the last few years talk compared to the players who have been around in the Scott Frost era. It's very different. It's very, very
well, and that's one of the unique dynamics of this whole deal. You now have a guy at the top who is brand new to the program as of 8 months ago, Mickey Joseph, talking to a group of players, most of which are carryovers from last year, but there's a healthy and a very important core of guys who also are in their first year of the program, and trying to mix all of these different personalities together, which was going to be a challenge for Scott Frost. And now it becomes a challenge for Mickey Joseph in the wake of the head guy being shown the door.
Yeah. An email real quick from Ross, I think in response to the call from Rick. Nebraska ranks 125th out of 131 teams in the nation in defense, gives up an average of 6.12 yards per play, gives up 492 yards per game, and that's with the 77th rated schedule in the country. Oklahoma coming to town. Yeesh. That's the one thing, man, that's going to be super hard to fix. No matter what changes with culture, all that stuff, the defense is what the defense is at this point.
We have about 2 minutes to the top of the hour. Do we have time for one more call?
One more call. Jim, you are finishing up our 3.5 hour coverage. Make it good.
Dear God.
Make it good. I'm just thinking about the coach out of Utah because, they're going to be like not be in a Power 5 or, it's you call Power 5 anymore. Mm-hmm. I've always liked the way he coached, so he might be an option.
Kyle Whittingham.
That'd be a hell of a hire, man. Hell of a hire.
It would be a couple of things that will be against him, and I'm not ruling him out as someone
You're gonna call him old.
Well, he is 62, 63.
Yeah.
But from some reports, it sounds like he's a guy that really likes it where he is and wants to end his career there.
Yeah.
And Whittingham certainly could do that. So, if he were 10 years younger, maybe he would see an opportunity to, man, I could really hit that next level by going to a program with even more resources in a richer conference. But that's going to be the biggest roadblock to a Kyle Whittingham candidacy are those things.
Mhm.
Though, if you could strip that away just as a pure football coach, would love to see it.
Yeah, he'd be an incredible hire, and I think he builds a program. I think the way that I think people would like the program to be built. I think he's a coach that could absolutely win in the Big Ten.
Well, that'll wrap up our coverage this afternoon here on 1620 The Zone, 1620thezone.com, and Zone TV. For those of you who have been kind of in and out on the coverage, you can go back. Josh will have all of our podcasts up on the Big Red Overreaction page if you want to catch any of the segments. Or if you're watching along on Zone TV on our YouTube channel, you can watch it at any time you wish. Want to thank Josh Odson for coming in, Neil Nelkin for coming in, doing a tremendous job getting us on the air today, Connor Happer from Lincoln, and Tickets for Less for sponsoring our coverage here this afternoon. We will join In Progress NFL on 1620 The Zone. The Raiders and the Chargers 3-3 as they are early in the second quarter at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. Josh, I'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.